There it is.
And we're off. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's the Kicking the Seat live stream roundtable review of Superman 2025, written and directed by James Gunn. And we have what may be the largest panel we have had on one of these live streams, at least in a long time. So I am happy to present here Earth's Mightiest critics. There's been a lot of talk and commentary around this film already in the nearly a week since it came out. But tonight we're going to hopefully do something a little bit different. We are not a channel of lovers or haters. We have a very mixed set of opinions on this movie, ranging from, I think, pretty much loved it to 0 out of 10 stars, which is my personal rating. If anyone has not seen the video that I posted, my immediate reaction, I vowed to not watch any more DC films, any more new DC films until James Gunn steps down. So that's me setting the table. But on the other end of that spectrum are people who have seen it multiple times since release and are here to defend their positions. We're going to be talking in depth about the movie. We are going to have spoilers. I'm going to put the spoiler banner on right after I do the round table of introductions. But we certainly appreciate everyone tuning in, whether you're catching us live or on the replay. So if you like this show, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications and all that good stuff. We are open for comments and super chats, so get on in here and let us know what you think. Overall thoughts on Superman, or if you want to debate anything that we're going to be discussing here tonight. And because we have such a full panel, we may be going over the hour mark. It's a wacky prediction. I don't know where it's coming from, but we're going to get into it. So let's start off with introductions. I'm Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Jeff York of the establishingshot.org and also Pipeline Artists. We have Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive and Every Movie Has a Lesson. We have David Fowley of Keeping It Real. Mike Crowley of You'll Probably Agree, aka YPA Reviews. We have the DC shill himself, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of Special Mark Productions and the Spoiler Room Podcast. And finally, last but certainly not least, Katie Glidewell, the blonde in front herself, representing all of Metropolis, including the love of Superman, with those handy little fans that we got. Some of us got at the press screening, which happened a little over a week ago. So, Superman 2025. I don't know if we could summarize this movie. I don't know exactly how we want to approach it. We typically do kind of high-level opinions. I think we can start here. Maybe it'll give us a good springboard because there is so much to talk about. It's difficult to think of a perfect structure for the conversation. So let's springboard off of initial reactions. I want to keep these very high level. No synopses, not getting into the nitty-gritty. Just, did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you somewhere in between? Let's set the table. I've already showed my hand. So, Katie, go first.
I loved it. I loved the feeling it gave me afterwards. I loved the reaction of the children when they were leaving the theater and how excited they were. I only had one major issue that was a gripe with. I did have some questions regarding some things, but yeah, it was a big thumbs up for me, and I loved it.
Okay, Mr. Fowley.
Man, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Is it the best Superman movie? Is it a perfect Superman movie? No, but yeah, I appreciated how James Gunn is bringing this kind of silver age tone and vibe to the big screen, and I had a great time with it. Again, some quibbles, but didn't destroy me having a great time with it.
Okay. Went from Fowley to Crowley. Sir, what do you make of the film?
I was in between on it. When I first saw it, I was kind of very bored with it, and I think the thing that kind of threw me off a little bit was David Corenswet's interpretation of Superman. Like, everything written for the character works for the character, but the performance seems a bit off. But we could get into that in a little bit. But yeah, it was in between for me. But I think I do like the direction it's going. I just think it needs less characters and a little more refinements and a little more writing and focus on Superman in his own Superman movie.
Okay, fair. Uh, oh wait, Mark, you blipped out right. Oh, is that camera issues? We'll come back to you in a second.
When it blew up.
That was perfectly timed.
That's funny. Yeah.
Done.
Mm-hmm. No, highly enjoyed it. 4 out of 5 in terms of rating and scale. I'm with David. It's not the best Superman movie you'll ever see, but for the modern sensibilities and the direction it wants to go, and to take this character to a new place while still honoring and respecting the vast history that the character has, I thought this hit the right notes. I really appreciated the lead performance of David Corenswet. I think he's a natural good look for what this part can be and can grow into this role. The dynamics of other characters in the film are a little busy. You know, there's a lot of plot, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of juggling and some stuff there. But in terms of film enjoyment and a blockbuster ride in a big screen, I got to take my kids to it today to see it a second time. It went over great with me and went over great with them, and that's the demographic that it matters. You know, can you take a Superman lover and keep their love, and can you bring some new fans to it? And I got to see this movie do that.
Okay, cool. Mark, you're back.
I am back.
Are
you sure you don't want to lead with Jeff? Jeff, I'm sure has other opinions. You don't need.
No, go ahead, Mark. I'll.
You don't need mine.
That's what you're here for, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
As much
Don't
as
play
I am
humble now, Mark.
I played humble before. I've been in a number of discussions with people already, and I enjoyed this quite a bit. Is it a perfect Superman film? No. But then again, I'm not a huge Superman fan. Never have been. I'm a DC shill. I do like Superman. Never have been quite the fan of the character. I've been a fan of Christopher Reeve Superman's movie and his portrayal of Superman as far as the comics and when he shows up. Usually not my character, and we'll get into that a little later, but he's usually not my character. So that said, given all the baggage, especially me having followed DC quite a bit, I enjoyed it. It was better than I thought it was going to be, especially from the trailers that I saw. I was not really hyped by the trailers that I saw. I was like, okay, I was going in leery, but I had fun. Outside of one sequence, I really enjoyed it. I didn't have a problem with the other characters. In fact, they made it more fun with me. And it also applies to how I take the Marvel films, which we'll get to later as well, probably. But overall, I had fun. It was far better than what I thought it was going to be. And if this is the first, let's all, back to Thor and 1 and Iron Man 1 and, let's go back to those as well. I think if this is the launching point for this, I'm feeling pretty good between this and Creature Commandos. And given the vibe of the Suicide Squad, but James Gunn is not for everyone, and I fully recognize that. So how I feel about Superman is probably how a Marvel fan felt about their films that I was just kind of on the fence about. And I get that. It's a little bit for the DC fans, I think now, a little bit of those folks. And, I'm not saying everybody who doesn't like it is an MCU fan. I'm just saying that, for me, it felt like I grabbed a comic book off the shelf, opened it up and read it. And it was like, I want to see more. And so that's what it did for me.
Okay. Yeah, Mark, real quick, you sound like you went underwater for a couple of those last couple of sentences. I don't know if you do adjust
My
your mic.
apologies. I'll take a look. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Let me see
Well, now
what
you
I can
sound
do.
fine.
Sounds better.
Yeah,
already.
you sound better now.
Yeah,
I
my connection's been doing that for a little while. My apologies on that, everyone. So
no
Mark,
worries.
I'm sorry. Did you do the blue, 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 blue from Wayne's World when you were doing the back in time?
I did, yes.
I adore you. I thought I was just making sure. I'm like, did he just do the blah, 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 blah?
Yes.
That was fucking awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, I did.
Watch your language, young lady.
And it's fitting. He's in his
Sorry.
basement.
Yeah, because I'm in a basement, so that's fitting.
Same.
But you're not in Illinois. That's the one thing.
I know. Well, no one's perfect, right?
It's true. All right, Jeff York. What
Yes,
say?
sir. I will concede that some of it was fun, well done, and I particularly like Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. I think she got the closest to the spirit of the comic books, other than Margot Kidder, probably in all of the different versions that have been done. Hence the '78 version. But I take issue with a great deal of the license that Mr. Gunn has taken with almost 80 plus year property. I think he made some of it too Gunnish and not too Superman-ish. And ultimately, I think part of my dislike of this movie is I don't understand why there is so much difficulty getting the Superman character and the tenets and the history of this earnest, positive, upbeat story. I'm going to disagree with everybody on the panel right off the bat by saying I think you are looking at it through maybe the Clark Kent glasses if you think this is a sunny, bright movie. I think it is half a sunny, bright movie. I think a lot of it is dark. I think a lot of it is ugly. I think a lot of it is nasty. And I'm not quite sure how kids or even adult kids are missing some of those things. So that's my thought, just as sort of a big overarching thing. And we'll get into the details of that because I think there's a lot of stuff to unpack here that makes it very much a typical James Gunn movie and not much of a Siegel and Schuster property.
That's very fair. And I think that a lot of that mirrors kind of my own sentiments. Question, Don, what the hell was that? What did you?
Oh, that's the dream scenario sleep mask we got from A24, and I felt like when you said Clark Kent glasses, why not Nicolas Cage from Superman Lives? So hey,
all right.
you know.
I thought maybe you were wanting to go asleep, not listening to what I had to say, Don.
No. That's when Ian talks. Don't worry, not me.
On my own show.
Ian, how do you feel?
No. Well, here's
Hey, Ian, can you move your logo a little more over Don's face, maybe?
Yes.
Apologies. This is where the logo is.
I'll wait over here.
Don, actually,
There's somebody behind those words there.
It's okay. Go ahead, Ian. Please.
No, I mean it's interesting because something that you said there, joking about the lack of respect on my own show. That was one of my big problems with this movie, is that Superman as a title character, and I think this leans into what Jeff was saying. He is not a respected figure in his own title film, and in many cases, he's relegated to a side figure that is the butt of a lot of jokes. Now, I understand that something I have been asking for in the last, almost 2 decades we've been talking about these comic book movies is, especially when it comes to a lot of the DC properties, like no one needs to see Batman's origin again with the the pearls and the bullets in the alley and all that stuff. We already know the character, right?
Totally agree.
Yeah. However, that is not the case in James Gunn's Superman, because so much has been changed about this character from his origins to the world he inhabits, from the opening text that we have to read, that we really need to know. We need some table setting for this movie, because throughout all of the stuff that's set up in the beginning poses way too many questions and contradicts itself and doesn't say a lot of good things for where the series, I'm not just talking about Superman, but DC in general, is going to be headed under James Gunn's stewardship. I mean, I said this to someone the other day that this is almost, I think, 3 films in a row where there's an opening title card that sets the scene that does damage to the narrative. We've got 28 years later, we've got this film, and damn, what was the other one? I don't know. I've already forgotten it.
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic World Rebirth. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. But yeah, I like I said, this is a 0 out of 10 for me. Now, there are elements that I like in the movie, but what makes it a 0 out of 10 is because all those elements are squandered. We have an excellent cast, but this is the first time that I've seen Nicholas Hoult in something where I wish I was not watching his character on screen. David Corenswet, I think, he might be a fine Superman, but he wasn't playing Superman in this movie. He was playing Superboy. He was whiny. He was, in the back of the bus almost the entire time, and he kept getting bailed out by everyone. He had no agency in his own movie. Half the time he was saved by his damn dog.
Don't get me started on the floor an awful lot,
yes.
Writhing in pain and being tortured. It's like, I think I said that Nathan Fillion as the Green Lantern had more victory laps in this film than Superman has allowed, which is extraordinary for a film that is supposed to relaunch this major title character for the DC.
Well, I mean, I will say, one sec. I think I appreciate what James Gunn did with Superman in this sense, is that he was able to predict my reaction in the theater. And so you kind of put that up on screen of the writhing around the floor in pain and wishing it would stop. But yeah, sorry, Mike, you were going to say something?
No, I was gonna say when it comes to pain in the movie, like I think some of the humor didn't work because it didn't really stem from the right place. Because in the beginning, when Superman is beaten up and they're bringing him into the Fortress of Solitude, and Gary's setting him up and where with the big sunbeam machine, the whole joke of the scene was that Superman was in horrible pain and that you're not supposed to expect that. But really, like him being in pain is supposed to be heroic, which the movie's trying to portray that, but it sort of fumbles the ball by trying to make it too gunny and jokey in instances like that.
Guess I just didn't take it like that scene at all.
Same. I feel like
I
Gunn
took
really
it.
toned
They
down-
literally set it up that the robots are automatons and they're there to take care of them, but they don't exactly care. And so yes, they were quippy a bit, but overall, I don't think he was trying to make fun of the pain. I think he was trying to point out the fact that these robots that he has serving for him are basically just there to serve him, but they don't really care whether or not they're just doing things because of their programming, which is their point. Trying to give them a little bit of an arc later on that they stumble on, but later on they talk about 4 wanting a name, whereas in the beginning we just have the robots trying to serve Superman. I never took, and I've seen it twice, I didn't take his pain as being a joke at all.
No,
Well,
I
of course it is, Mark, because the first when Crypto comes to rescue him, the first thing we see of the dog is him like jumping all over him, and it's cute, it's puppy fun, but it's the it's straight out of Family Guy. That is a humorous moment.
And when they have the camera like pulling out as the sun's on him, he's like making the ugliest face imaginable while they're playing like the most heroic music imaginable, as if they're saying like, hey, this is like, I get what they're saying like, no, this is a real superhero, and as a real hero he would have to take a beating and know how to get himself back up and fight the good fight again. But the way they execute it, it's too much like a haha, look, Superman's hurting, isn't this funny, you weren't expecting this.
I guess I didn't take it like that at all.
I think they're setting the table. I think they're setting the table immediately, thanks to the words in the beginning of the movie, and also with the immediate characterization and showing him get his ass kicked, that this is a less than hugely overpowered Superman, which we've seen in animated series and other places where you have a Superman that is extremely strong and extremely powerful, but not that powerful. And
that's also
relatability down,
Superman.
and you show that he's. Yeah, but he's still the top metahuman you got. He just happens to not be, on level 30,000. He's on level 2,000.
You mentioned he was more like. Oh, go ahead, Don. Sorry.
No, but by you're introducing the idea that you have to have this, the depowered character, which is fine and well because he's still plenty powerful. He's still picking up buildings, doing everything you want him to do. But then you also have the reliability on just the Kryptonian stuff that he's got to do, or the Kryptonian systems around him. By having that two-pronged thing, the idea of like he's fallible, because we're already here in a losing situation and he needs help from automatons. And then the second part is, where does he go when he's done doing that? He goes right back into the fray, like he says he's going to do. It's not I'll heal up and I'll get back to it in 2 weeks. He's not a lazy millennial trying to wait for, a coffee before he goes back. He goes right back to it, and not even fully powered to get back to where the battle needs to go. Now the hammer thing moves on and whatnot, but he was going back. It's not like he's ditching and avoiding things because he's depowered, weakened, or a sissy. So
I don't think anybody said that, Don. But
yeah,
but I want to go back.
Yeah,
I want to go back to the robots, though.
Meant, but no.
Okay. First, 2 things. One, Mike, the way you interpret that scene is I don't interpret that moment of him being re-energized by the sun and writhing in pain as being comedic. I think that was a bit of a tonal shift. But I will say, as far as the robots, Mark, you brought this point up about they're just automatons. They're not, because there is the Alan Tudyk bot, Gary, as we come to find his name later, who makes a remark of like, I am an automaton and I can't, you don't have any feelings to hurt, essentially. But then they have the new robot, number 4, who, what he said, Superman says, oh, hey, number 4. And she says, oh, he acknowledged me. So 12? She was a robot blushing, whatever. But she was a robot who was expressing an emotion because she was, oh my gosh, the cute boy acknowledged me. So which is it? But again, let's go talk about that opening crawl. We talk 300 years ago, metahumans manifested
Right out of
on
a comic
Earth,
book.
right? Okay,
This is how you skip. This is
no,
how you
that's
skip
fine.
the
No,
origin
Don,
story in every middle issue comic book.
Don, I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
that. Let me finish.
All right.
You establish that there are metahumans on this planet.
Mhm.
In this film, we see 5 of them, maybe. We see the Justice Gang, we see Superman, we see Metamorpho later, and then we see again. Sorry, I forgot to turn on the spoiler banner, everybody. But we're talking
got it.
spoilers. We're getting
You got
into
it on.
It's on there.
I'm talking mostly for the people who might be listening. Well, yeah, you already would have heard this for the audio podcast. I put on the spoiler, so we are talking spoilers. But they established there are metahumans on Earth, and this goes back to what I was saying about we need an origin story here, because in all of the Superman, the movies that we've seen, Superman is kind of like he comes to Earth and he announces himself, and then we get to see other kind of people emerge and present themselves as threats or friends or whatever. If Superman is showing up on Earth and there are other superpowered beings here that are public, what do they think of him? What does he think of them? What is their relationship to him? Is he the Earth's mightiest metahuman, as he has been established in these other movies, or is he lower down the totem pole, which is why, again, throughout the rest of the movie, nobody respects him? And this whole idea of like, yeah, he's a young superhero. No, he's not. He got to Earth 30 years ago. Now, they don't establish how old he was in his human form when he got to Earth. But if we are to go established by the established lore, which we can't because this movie messes with absolutely everything, including where this film takes place in the current DC continuity of the DCEU, which it does,
There is
based
no
on certain. Yes, there is.
I was going to say.
We've got Peacemaker showing up in a cameo. There are 1 or 2 other references to other Zack Snyder interpretations of these characters, which brings it all under the umbrella. But even if you want to throw that out, you've got Peacemaker on a cameo on the television, which means that somewhere out there is a Harley Quinn, is a Ben Affleck Batman, is probably a Henry Cavill Superman.
No.
Does that mean, because if you're going to take that logic, then you're going to totally dismantle the MCU with their multiverse. The
MCU set up that there is a multiverse.
Well,
this is supposed to be a relaunching of the DC cinematic universe, but all he's doing is he's taking the scraps.
I could go down to the comic book store, and this is the only thing that and I get what you're saying, Ian, but I could go down to the comic book store, pick out a number 1 of 3 different Superman licensed stories going on right now that are official, and each one of them could be different in their origin story.
But you cannot do that in a movie theater right now, Mark, and that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about going to the comic shop. We're talking about the relaunch of a franchise.
It's a relaunch of a franchise, but
it's not a relaunch because it's holding on to the other stuff that's come before it.
What stuff?
It is not holding on. It's stunt casting cameos for John Cena because he's a fun friend of the director.
It includes.
Are you trying to say?
But I think it shows.
Let me ask this question. Let me ask this question.
Okay.
By what you just said, Don, are we to say that the second season of the Peacemaker television show and the Lanterns TV series and the Supergirl movie that's coming after that, there's not going to be any connective tissue to this Superman film and DC going forward?
No, there'll be connective tissue because that has been explained.
I said,
movie, that's all post-production-y bullshit stuff. That's all the cycle of a studio planning their course. But if it happens to include John Cena and some graduated characters that make it because they're successful, that's a studio decision, not a James Gunn decision.
I think we have different definitions of what a relaunch is. And resetting for a cinematic universe.
Well, actually,
in this universe.
I think Jeff was going to say something. I wanted to hear.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you, Mark. I was going to say, I think what Ian is getting at, if not in the specifics of these points we could discuss and argue about, is I dare say a bigger picture thing that I think is there is an awful lot of that kind of distraction. And I think even with the other metahumans in it, they're a distraction. I mean, I'm going to quote, and I know it's a typical one that's been thrown around a lot, but I think it's a good one. As Syndrome said in The Incredibles, when everyone is super, no one will be. What makes Superman so special if there's all these metahumans who have been around forever? Why would we even notice him? Unless it's because he's decided to be sort of this caretaker of the planet. But then again, the Green Lantern thinks he's that. I think that stuff gets in the way. I think the Senna cameo and some of those other bits get in the way. If you're going to have a character who says, we don't feel anything, and immediately followed by a robot who goes, oh, he looked at me, then what are you doing other than going for an easy laugh? It's distraction. Meanwhile, to Ian's point, how did he get here? What's the reception of him? We don't even see how Lois came to figure out that he was Superman. And I just think that if you want to talk about new audiences, Don, and your kids and other people coming to this fresh, if you haven't gone down to that comic book store and pulled the 3 titles that Mark's talking about, or you don't have Daddy Don who loves Superman and has since 78, I think you're going to be darn confused because a lot of it doesn't make sense. I think that continues. Just let me finish. I think that continues on to tone, which was my problem with it. It's all over the map. You have scenes of giddy kindness and fun and humor, saving a squirrel, and the wonderful romantic swirling at the end with the long kiss between Lois and Superman. That's fantastic stuff. And then you turn around and you have Superman getting pummeled in almost every scene like it's a bad video game. A1, A1, A1. And that's essentially what Lex Luthor does, like he's playing Call of Duty. I just don't know how that darkness jibes with this, oh, it's sunny and my kids loved it. No, people are walking out of it and wanting to fly. It's like, really? I think there's too much contradictions throughout this, including the basic narrative tenets of who is he? How did he get here? What's going on with him and Lois? We walk into them having a big argument. I think those kind of things are bad narratively. If you were going to write it, you would do something, you would at least acknowledge it or something. And then to dismiss, well, you know, he's wearing those fancy specs that nobody can see who he is. Those are comics.
Well, that was one of my questions is,
show me the story. Show me the story. Don't tell me in titles. Don't tell me in a line that throws it all away. Show me the story. If you're going to reinvent this whole thing and walk away from Cavill, tell me the story.
How many times have you guys, and I mean you guys all here, every single one of you, myself probably included, have pissed and moaned about being spoon-fed over exposition in 1,000 of these movies?
Well,
pay
bad
attention to this
exposition,
movie,
yeah.
and you could follow along through characterization, through acting, through interaction, where you could pick up on the fact that
how did Lois find out that Clark Kent was Superman?
Because they have a complicated relationship, and the boss snuffed it out at the end of the movie. It's not that hard.
3 months. Who knows?
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I think those are things that you should do if you're reinventing stories.
They've been going on for 3 months. Right.
And it's bad exposition, Don. It's not exposition altogether.
Heaven forbid
it's
a movie
bad
asks you to pay
exposition.
attention. How come?
No, that's not paying attention, Don. That's not telling me stuff that would be crucial to understanding
get a
some
picture
of the
book
stuff.
in the kids section of the library. Then,
please,
get some exposition.
No, yeah.
You don't need that much.
I will say,
I think that relationship, which is the core of the movie, yeah, you do.
Okay, all right, hold on. Time out. I'm putting up the T. Mike, step in as the referee. What are you going to do?
I was in between. I didn't mind them not doing the backstory again because no matter how you do it, the audience is immediately going to say, "Oh, here we go again." Superman comes from Krypton, and yeah, they could have like maybe done like a cheesy like 10-minute intro where he goes, "Hi, my name is Superman. My planet used to exist, and now it got destroyed." And if they did something like that, I think people would have tuned out to it. So I appreciated the fact that they didn't have that whole large backstory. What kind of got me bored is the fact that this movie's about Superman, but it gets so lost with all these other characters trying to set up this this whole universe that you end up losing track of the central character. And whenever Superman was standing up for truth, like he has that big speech at the end that says exactly everything Superman should say, but the way Corenswet's saying it, he's like shouting it at the top of his lungs to everybody. And he does kind of come off, like Ian says, kind of like a super boy in that scene. So I didn't like I liked the way they wrote Superman, but I didn't like the way they had him act in the film. It was too much gravitas and not enough restrainment. I mean, and maybe that's just because I'm married to Christopher Reeve, and it's just something that not literally.
Oh, okay, sorry.
See, and I totally see where you guys are coming from, and I'm gonna just say, if this was, again, set the Wayback Machine, as Katie said, if we set it back to before we had, and I counted this just for our show, I went through my 19 years of YouTube doing minute reviews and compiled all of my reviews for all the DC films, all 29 of them, and Marvel films, all 29 of them, and all like 17, including this one, Marvel DC films, which I might have missed one in there, but still. So between that, we're looking at 46 superhero films in 19 years or less. Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And I totally get what you're saying, Ian, especially if you love the Superman character. Being a Bat fan, I've seen my main character reinterpreted and rewritten at least 4 times. Okay, so maybe that's part of the reason why the points that you guys are making didn't quite bug me, because being a Bat fan, I'm used to them completely changing the lore or maybe even jumping into things. And I guess for me, it didn't bother me, but I totally get what you're saying. If this is a reboot, if this is a start, if you're trying to reintroduce the Gunn Superman, you wanted more of Superman and less of the rest of this. Whereas for me, I've seen 46 of these films. I was fine without that. I could put it together, and it made me want to see more. And who knows, they're going to maybe explore more later on. We've seen that with the MCU films, where they've introduced one minor character, not minor character. They had a main character, but they have a bunch of characters around that character, and we don't really see more of that character till later on. We have seen that, but I get the criticism, and
Mark,
I guess for me as a viewer, it didn't bug me because we've had so many of these.
But the key difference is we haven't had 46 Batman movies. We've had, I don't know, less than a dozen.
How many do you need?
All right. Well, but here's my point. We don't need to see that origin, because in all of those films, on all of those interpretations, from Burton
And you're
to
calling for an origin in this one.
Listen,
Listen,
from Burton to Schumacher to Nolan to Snyder, it has been the exact same origin story. You've got the family, and whether or not they update it, because I know Snyder, he set his in probably the 90s, but it's always the rich family going to see Zorro. They go down the alley, they get attacked. The one wrinkle is that Burton had the Joker being, the person who killed the Batman's parents. It's a minor wrinkle, but it is also dealt with significantly. It's set up and dealt with in that film in a story arc. What we have here, and this begins with the opening title crawl about the time that the metahumans have been on Earth, in terms of how Superman relates to the world and it to him, but also we have the major revelation. There's 2 problems with Superman's parentage: his Earth parents and his Kryptonian parents.
Is it not dealt with seriously enough, Ian?
It's not. And I'll say, first of all, Ma and Pa Kent, I have never seen interpretation. They are Kansas farmers, but I've never seen interpretation of them that is this disrespectful and this out of touch and this dismissive of red stateness as the rude. I mean, we go from Glenn Ford to Kevin Costner to Pruitt Taylor Vince, who again is a fine actor, but they've got Ma and Pa Kent talking about they can't use a cell phone. They have these cornpone accents that I think I've been through Kansas once, but that's more of a like the
Raise
bottom
your hand
of
if
the
you've been
holler in
through Kansas
Alabama,
more than
right? But listen,
just me. Okay, thanks.
What I'm saying is these people, I don't believe that they raised that smart kid. I don't believe that they gave him any kind of like cultural influence or impact. You can see that in the other interpretations of Ma Pa Kent in the other movies, in the TV shows, and the other media. They are salt of the earth, but they're not idiots, which is what they come off as in the couple of scenes we get in this movie. The other thing is the very important part, which is why we need a setup, because it's established that this is the truth of the film, is that Kal-El and Laura-El send Superman to Earth to conquer and take women by force and spread the seed and create a new master race of Kryptonian humans. That's not Superman's origin. That's Zod's plan throughout comics and TV and movie history. And if you're going to say that that's the seed of Superman in this movie, you're darn right it needs to be set up and not just dismissed. And the movie doubles down and triples down on the fact that this is the truth of the film. I've heard people say, oh, they're going to fix it in the next one. Well, they say that through the recorded message that somehow Lex Luthor and a team of scientists is able to figure out, even though Superman has Kryptonian robots who've been with him for ostensibly 3 decades, and they can't figure out how to translate or fix a broken Kryptonian message, but Earthlings who apparently know nothing of Krypton or Krypton culture are able to do it in a matter of days. Big question mark. But these, these messages are interpreted. Lex Luthor says, I had the best people look at it. And so we're supposed to take that as, well, it's Lex Luthor saying it, so it's probably not true. But then you have Mr. Terrific coming in and saying, yeah, I know the people who looked at this, they're legit. So the truth of this film is that Superman was sent on a message of conquest and colonization, which, yeah, he grows up with these values from Ma and Pa Kent, but there's no real time in this movie to deal with that struggle. We talk about all the other characters of the movies. If this really was a Superman film, you want to introduce that element, then make the movie about that and wrap into a larger story. I'm not even going to get into the ridiculousness of Lex Luthor's plan right now, but you could have taken out the 5 or 6 unnecessary steps of his plot for world domination, boiled it down to the one that he had in his back pocket the entire time, and dealt with some real Superman characterization.
One thing that felt a little off with the whole Jor-El plot twist was that this movie's trying so hard to be faithful to the comics and prides itself on it, yet it puts something in there that's completely antithetical to it, just so then you could kind of have a plot twist where you go, oh man, how's Superman going to handle this? But it didn't work because of that. They didn't, like, why throw a curveball when you're already going for straight strikeouts? Like, it doesn't make sense why Gunn made that decision.
Because that thematic arc is to get this guy who is an alien, feels outside, immigrant, whatever label you want to put on here that's always been there. You're trying to get this guy to make that choice of, hey, I'm here for the do good and good, truth, justice, American way stuff. By putting him into that fray with the political war that he's embroiled in, and then to have the personal thing come out the way that it does, to see his character rebound from that, get help from Kansas from that, have Lois help him understand that through either the political part or the parental part. That arc of growth that he has to overcome, from whatever level you want to say of personal pride to embarrassment to just confidence, all of that is there and is purposely there. It fits where you want this character to grow in his 3rd year on the job. I'll take it.
A smart thing to do would be, if they're gonna quote unquote fix it in the next film, they could have had maybe a mid-credit sequence where they go, oh look, we just noticed Lex tampered with the footage. But
did you miss the part where they blew the story in the movie where you don't need it after the credits? I swear you guys slept through 15 minutes movie.
For me, as far as the robots not interpreting Kal-El, at first it was odd, but later on when you find out what the complete message is, it's pretty much implied. In fact, the robot says that he was trying to protect Kal-El. He didn't mean more than just protect him from damage or anything. He states this after Kal-El discovers the message. He talks to the robot, and the robot's saying there he was trying to protect him. He's trying to protect. I think the robots could have restored this message at any time. I think the robots knew what this message was, and they dropped the line of they were protecting him because they saw what he was doing, and that's better than having him become conquering of Earth.
But I thought these were automatons who don't have personalities like concern or the ability to be deceptive. Which is it?
They're there to protect him, and they could have easily interpreted that as protecting him, as not playing the entire message.
Let's talk about protection then, because if you want to talk about protection with these robots, they wear capes. They look like they should be able to do something, but they don't. They can't attack. They can't defend the Fortress of Solitude. They don't have any kind of an early warning system. Hey, there are people approaching from 200 yards away that just popped up in the snow. There's nothing there. These robots are completely useless except as MacGuffins to move along a weak story. Now, I want to get back to something here. As far as what do you mean?
A MacGuffin that moves along the story. We've seen him for 40 years.
Right, but R2D2 has nothing to do with the robot
I
character
know,
in this
but you
movie.
need examples of things that'll just we let that one pass. Why can't you let these
Don,
two
I
pass?
think you have to
No.
stop thinking that he is arguing against tenets or tropes in films. He's not arguing against them. He's arguing
Okay.
against them the way they're used here. That's a difference. It's the way
Okay.
they're used, not saying that you can't do exposition or
Mhm.
those kind of things.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, well, no, I mean, like,
Slippery slope. Shovel the snow.
back up, Don. What does bring up R2D2 have to mean in the context?
just
I'm
like,
specifically saying about these robots
Do you
and their
want
apparent
helpful? I mean,
uselessness.
because you get to the point 0 out of 10 of shelving the entire movie over inconsequential, tropey things that we've seen 1,000 other times. If you want to do execution and how it's a little wishy-washy with this, fair, but we can
No, Don,
plot armor R2D2 and C3PO the same dumbass way. And
Don, I'm saying that I have
laugh and enjoy it
Don,
and we have a good time.
it's not nitpicking. I am saying that there is a problem
this
with
is the
every
show of
single
nitpicking.
aspect. There is a problem with every single narrative aspect of this film. Now, if there's a couple of things like, oh, I don't understand how Bruce Wayne popped up at the end of Gotham, in Gotham at the end of The Dark Knight. Yeah, that's a big problem, but it's one problem out of maybe 2 in a 3-hour, epic film that is, not the best Batman film. Okay,
Yeah, that
but
movie has some a lot.
I'm not trying to
right, but no,
that scoreboard's
in
a different
terms of
scoreboard every movie all day.
no, in terms of plot and making sense, Dark Knight is a pretty solid film. It's a weak film in terms of some of the characterizations, what they choose to do with the story, but the story they choose to tell, they tell it pretty well, and they didn't mean to rhyme there. But yeah, okay.
Sure, go ahead.
The entire thing of the parents, right? Again, that is it's a complete
bold angle. Yeah, I get it.
It is a bold angle, but the movie isn't about that. And Clark Kent / Superman, I'll call him Superman because Clark Kent shows up for, I think, maybe 1.5 scenes in this film. But in terms of, he doesn't have an arc in relation to that news because he starts out believing in himself and believing in values and believing in being a good person and helping the people of Earth. He finds out that he was sent here on a mission of genocide, and he's shocked by it. He goes back to Kansas, not because he's traumatized by this information, but because he gets his ass beat for the 3rd, 4th, 5th time in this movie and has to go back and recover. And during that visit, he talks to Pa Kent about it, and Pa Kent gives him a speech that I'm sure he gave him right before he left for Metropolis, because we've seen this in other interpretations of Superman, which is that you're a good person, you've got power and responsibility to go help people. And Superman says, oh, yeah, I forgot, you're right. And then he goes off. There's no arc there. It's just him remembering for something he never actually forgot.
How is what you just described not an arc?
Because he doesn't grow or learn anything from that. He just says, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot that those parents didn't mean anything to me, although I was devastated by it for about 2 minutes because this movie is moving along at a bullet's pace. There's no time to pull over and examine everything.
Get your cardio up then, buddy. I can't be the only one that thinks this. Come on. Like,
right.
Katie and David,
and David, you've been quiet during this melee. Let's get some thoughts here on what we've been talking about.
I feel like I should have popcorn.
I know, right?
Oh, I've got.
Did you get the bucket? Oh. I will. Okay, I will give this movie a parenthetical 1 out of 10 because I think the Daily Planet newspaper box popcorn bucket at AMC is pretty boss.
It's pretty cool.
Yes,
I think one of the subjects that maybe would be interesting to talk about, I think you're getting at some of it, Ian, and I'd be curious to hear other people's take on it because I haven't read everybody's reviews or if they've done them whatever yet, so forgive me for that. But I think that, if you're going to reboot Superman and you want to take some liberties and licenses with it, as a new guy coming to it, and James Gunn with his, he is the guy who did Super, and he is the guy who did Guardians of the Galaxy 3 with animals with, wheels for legs and stuff, and he still kills them all off. He's a cynical man and a dark man in many respects. And there is a lot of darkness in this, but despite everybody thinking that it's this kindness is the new punk rock, and some of that goes a good ways, but not all of it. Was anybody else on this panel disappointed that there's so many other characters, that Superman spends so much time being tortured, that Lex Luthor is really, after some pretty good actors have played him, Nicholas Hoult is a very funny actor. He was, I think, BAFTA nominated for The Favorite, and has done other great stuff, is so one note. They don't give him one really good line. Now, is he a threatening villain? Sure, but so is Gene Hackman, and he was quipping all the time, but he was still a threat, even to the point where he dismisses Miss Teschmacher's mother with a, I don't think so. Look at his watch. Didn't that kind of stuff feel like distractions to you? Because I think ultimately for me is Gunn spends so much time in the stuff that I had questions about, and then these other things that you want in that I feel are somehow left out or not given enough due. I mean, if you think about Lex Luthor's character in this movie, he's in two places. He's in his, little, sort of pad where he's, telling everybody to beat the crap out of Superman, his little, lair there or whatever in the high rise. And then he visits the, the Fortress of Solitude. I mean, it's such a static position for this character who, I don't know. I felt that some of those kind of things were missed opportunities. I'm just curious if anybody else felt some of that, because you all said, I like it. I don't think it's the greatest thing, but I mean, are those some of the things that bother you? Because those are the things that had my head scratching on this. Like, how do you do that when you're trying to reboot this? And to Ian's point, we have Clark Kent in it for a minute and a half. And when he's interviewing Lois, he's basically Superman. So it's like, where's that? I mean, I will just throw this out too as just a thing that I think shows how some of this is off. I mean, is Perry White a humongous character? Does he have to be in every movie? No. Jackie Cooper made him a really big deal in the first one. He was funny. He doesn't have a line until the last 20 minutes of this movie. And it's that artificial thing where they sort of throw him into the Mr. Terrific mobile and help them save the day. I just think that's crazy if you're going to cast a Tony-nominated, respected actor like Wendell Pierce and then give him literally nothing to do for 2.5 hours.
I think for Luthor, it's, I think the intention is you want to show a guy where you've got, one, you want to show total evil. There's no gray area, no sympathetic characters. We've seen the sympathetic villain route too much in the last 10, 15 years. So,
Loki.
Exactly. So like,
right.
You don't need, I mean, you want to paint the blackest hat you can, you make him angry and you put him in the NV seat. I think the other thing is, and it's kind of explained by just how good he is at this attack. He's bided his time and he's waited for this moment with the Bravian hammer and the setup of this civil war or the country takeover that he's doing. Like, we're opening the issue of this comic, of this movie, of him. This is his moment to spring the trap. He's been watching Superman for 3 years. He's been charting the moves to make the video game things. He's been, laying his seeds for the country takeover, and he has found his moment to get Superman his first loss, which opens the movie, and to extend that further by smearing his character and doing all the things. I think we're watching that culmination point that maybe had 4 issues of lead up here before we opened the book to this one, but I didn't take it as a lost. I didn't need more hues than that. I think if you do more hues than that, you kind of veer to the point of making a sympathetic villain, or you're going to ape Gene Hackman.
Well, I disagree with that. I don't think you have to. I mean, James Bond movies and lots of villains are out there who are evil, and even horror movie people who have at least a certain amount of smarts or cleverness to it. I also just think, did it bother you that Lex Luthor has come up with this rip in the fabric and he's got all this stuff going on in this between dimensions, and yet somehow he doesn't think that gives him any kind of, claims to being a pretty cool guy on the planet, especially when there's all these other metahumans flying around. It's like, well, they all come here with an advantage that I don't have, but look what I did just on good old human know-how. I just find his character to be sort of unfathomable here. It's inexplicable. He's not smart. He's not funny. He's not charming. He's just an asshole. And we're going to let the villain be the villain, but he's nothing more than that. He's one-dimensional, Don. He doesn't do a damn thing except be an asshole here. Really, the Lex Luthor of your comic book and all the other worlds of Superman have treated him as one of the most sophisticated villains, but you're happy with the one note.
I'm happy with the guy who has the very multi-pronged plan to take down the thing he's upset about. And I saw that. So I see 8 dimensions to his assholery, if that's what you want me to go for. But it's all in the vein of asshole. I get that. It's all in the vein of Black Cat and the villain. I'll take that to, should I care about this guy? I'm
not asking you to care about him. Yeah. I'm asking you to enjoy him on screen and have him play something that's more than one-dimensional. That's different, Don.
Give me
You don't
another
listen to
dimension you
people
need
when
us.
they argue. You
No,
tell
no,
me that
no.
I'm asking him to be
Whoa,
likable. I've never
whoa.
said be likable.
Name-
I'm asking
name
him to
another
be
dimension.
interesting or
What-
witty.
You need interesting,
That
or would
doesn't
you
make
go
him
with asshole
likable.
just to
It doesn't
palate
make him to be
yourself?
likable.
Hold on, guys.
I think
Hold
I
on.
think 2-dimensional is better than 1-dimensional, and 3-dimensional would be
Sure.
ideal.
What second
right.
dimension do you need, Jeff?
I'm-
You need witty and
I'm
cute.
gonna go.
I would say
Mark,
dimension to his
Hold
character.
on, one sec. Let's jump in, Mark.
Okay.
Being a DC show and just watching, as I mentioned, 46 of these in general. All of these films, and now I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying I think part of the reason why it didn't bug me is because I've grown used to it. Even thinking back to Gene Hackman's Luthor. We love Gene Hackman's Luthor. Don't get me wrong. I love Gene Hackman's Luthor. If you look at his motivation for that film, though, too, it wasn't to kill Superman, but it was a land grab, similar to what you have here. Okay, that's all his motivation really was. Superman was in the way. And again, same beats here. Was it executed with more finesse in Christopher Reeve's Superman? I will say yes. It wasn't done with a hammer. It was done with a scalpel. But at its core, that villain even only had the motivation for a land grab, what you really have here. And he has the hatred for Superman. So they've added that element. But almost every single MCU character who has been a true villain, and almost every single DC villain that we've seen portrayed on screen since they've started the comic book films, they unfortunately have not given enough to your villains. And if they do give enough to your villains, those villains become heroes, aka Loki. Loki is the one that started out, I'm like, he's a badass villain. This is very cool. And by Thor, Dark World, not so much. And by the third one, he's literally just bros. Most of it, I mean, I could be wrong. You guys are
No,
far more the experts and everything. But for me, from my perspective, from watching all these, even my DCU, I'm a DCU shill, and I will fully say they have shortchanged a number of villains, including Bane. We still have not gotten a proper Bane.
Right.
We haven't gotten a proper Poison Ivy. We've kind of got a proper Catwoman a couple times, but she's a gray area character. She's not really a tried and true villain. I mean, we have, on one hand, I could count through 49 films.
Well, the animated series have done it very well, and unfortunately,
much.
the major motion picture filmmakers never take a page from those
Long form
playbooks,
versus short
which are-
form there. Like
I'm not talking about
But still,
animated.
over all
I
those
love
seasons, Denny and Tim and those folks have done such a
Animated.
job.
even the
Keep going.
animated one-off films. What was that, Katie?
No, I'm saying keep going, Mark. You were on a roll. Keep
I'm
going.
just, I'm saying that I guess for me, I totally get the criticism, and it is a criticism that I guess has been sitting in the back of my head for a long time. But by now, almost 50 comic book films over 19 years, I've kind of gotten used to it. So I guess for me, it's not that big of a deal, because the biggest complicated character we got, look how long it took them 10 years to build up that villain to actually make a complicated villain in the form of Thanos. But if you look at every other villain that has been in any comic book film, one hand I can count multi-dimensional, and they're still villains. If you start to give them dimensions, the writers have no idea where to go with them besides making them the one note. The only place I've seen it kind of done better, actually I have seen done better, the CW shows. And maybe that's what this kind of reminds me of, and that's why it's bugging some people. This reminds me of the first season of Arrowverse. First season of the Arrowverse with Arrow was decent. Wasn't great, but it was interesting. They introduced a number of characters. It wasn't just about Arrow, and it exploded from there to launch one of my favorite comic book series, which was Legends of Tomorrow. I love Legends of Tomorrow, and you know why I loved Legends of Tomorrow is because they had no restrictions, basically. You had bad guys that were good guys that were bad guys. They were able to go, but then you have it, that's a TV series. You've got enough to develop. And the writers still can't seem to really give us, in these massive amount of MCU films that now we've got comic book characters all over, they can't seem to write really layered villains that are still tried and true bad guys, because if you start to layer them, they feel, oh, you got to give them some sympathy or emotion or some backstory to explain why they're evil. They can't just be pure evil. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy, even, don't get me wrong, I love James Gunn. First Guardians of the Galaxy, the villain who a lot of people were excited about in the Marvel use, which I had no clue who he was, by the way, is whittled down to a guy who has teleported from planet A to planet B, comes down to the planet with an Infinity Stone, and gets beat by a dance-off. Okay, so I'm not, and again, I'm not excusing the weakness necessarily, but I think for me, it's just one of those, I don't look at that as a criticism anymore. I'm looking at that as a standard, and I would love a multi-layered, straight, tried and true superhero villain.
Well, but here's the thing, Mark. If you're saying that because in 46 movies you haven't really seen this, that you've gotten used to it, that's no way to launch something that's a quote unquote new direction or a new universe for DC, because the answer is, well, if James Gunn has 10 more movies planned out, or 10 years, I should say, of TV and films, given what you're saying, why bother watching any of them? Because you're not going to get any kind of layer or nuance or anything new. You're going to get the latest special effects, the latest hot actor doing stuff that we've been watching for, by that time will be 25, 30 years. I also want to bring something up with Thanos. It was not a 10-year build up to Thanos. It was a 2-movie revelation of Thanos. The build up was people finding stones, and it was the MacGuffin, but it wasn't, he was such a nuanced character that we had to take 10 films to understand him. His plan, his motivation wasn't revealed until Infinity War, which is the end of the 10-year run. So, I mean, I'm not, quibbling with you there. I'm just, it's something that's kind of always bugged me. Oh, we built this character up for 10 years. Not really.
Well, I mean, I shouldn't say, I shouldn't say built up as far as his personality, just built him up as someone who's actually a viable threat that's actually going to take on a going back through my reviews, the superhero film that I enjoyed the most, and maybe that's why I enjoyed Superman, you'll never guess, the one at the highest rating out of all of them. Now, I've given a lot of DCU 5, and I've given a lot of Marvel 5s and 4s. The first Avengers film. The first Avengers film, out of all my rankings, I even made a little extra graphic. I forgot about this completely. An epic 5 stub. I loved the Avengers film, the first one. I really enjoyed it. And if you look at that has all the elements that suddenly seem to have fallen by the wayside, either in little bits or big bits, since that film. They each gave one of those characters at least a movie, if not 2, to breathe. We got to know them. They give you a villain who, at that time, Loki was still a bad guy. Yeah. Loki was working.
Carving out eyes. Yeah.
He was looking. He was a bad guy, but he did have personality, thanks partly to Tom Hiddleston's performance. But he was still considered a bad guy. He was not a gray area guy at that point. The Avengers, I think, in all honesty, I think everything with comic book films, they peaked with Avengers, and then after that, as far as villains, some nuance, some build up, everything was off to the races. And then you had DC trying to catch up. And the one thing that I will give total everybody's criticism, you like what you like, as Don would say at the end of the day, totally respect that. I think for Gunn, in all honesty, I wish Warner Brothers and DC would have just stopped. I wish they would have stopped for give me a few years and come back.
A break here would be nice, for sure.
Just give us a break. Even the DC. Yeah, let Marvel run their thing. Yeah. Marvel's changed their story since Endgame. They've changed their guide either through real world events or just because they're trying to gauge the internet. They've changed course 3 times. They're now talking about bringing in the mystic angle of the MCU now is the latest thing with Blade and Ghost Rider, and I want to get sorry, I didn't mean to, but I guess what I'm saying is bringing it back around to Superman. For me, I think it's one of those things where it didn't bug me because I'm kind of used to seeing it. I found a lot of entertainment in it, but trust me, I would have loved a better. It would have been nice to see something really nuanced and new. They tried it, but with the amount of baggage that came along with DC, that's why I'm saying they needed to just stop making any comic book stuff until that baggage fall a little bit more by the wayside, because that baggage has been there forever and they haven't lost it yet. And so him coming out with this film with so much baggage and still having it be top of the box office in its opening weekend, which a lot of people thought it was going to fail, I give him props for that. But I know plenty of people that feel like Ian and feel like Jeff, and they are legit gripes depending on what you're looking for in a film and what you're going for. And I guess for me, it wasn't that, but I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying this film is flawless. I'll tell you one sequence right now that bugs me, even the second time around when I watched it in 3D, the Pocket Universe.
Okay.
The Pocket Universe battle with Metamorpho, that whole sequence is why I gave it 4 instead of 5. That sequence alone dropped it down for me that much, because I was like, there's other ways you could have done this, or even done it more briefly and added something else, but you didn't. And they went for that fight, and that whole sequence of after he breaks out Metamorpho with the baby till when they get out, that sequence it actually started to take me out for it. Now, what brought me back in was because of the rest of the film. But that sequence, had they kept going with that or spent any more time in the Pocket Universe, I probably would have really checked out of this film. But I was glad they dumped out. There were other ways they could have done that, and they didn't. But,
so let's talk about the Pocket Universe. No, it's good. Superman volunteers to hand himself over to the authorities. So we have another scene, much like in Man of Steel, where Superman is being led away in handcuffs. I get that the government has a deal with Lex Luthor because Lex has revealed that Superman is a threat to Earth because of the message from his parents that Lex discovers at the Fortress of Solitude, decodes and broadcasts to the world, instantly turning everybody on the planet against Superman, which is also another problem which we can talk about or not. Like I said, every decision that's made in this movie raises 5 questions. But Superman gets led away to a special camp that Luthor has set up with, paramilitary units stationed all around. They go into this tent, and inside the tent is a portal. And the moment that portal opens up and Lex Luthor says, "This is a pocket dimension that I've created," Superman should have and would have, if he had any damn sense. The man is 33 years old. He's been a superhero for 3 years, an adult for 15. Should have busted out of those handcuffs, which weren't kryptonite lined or anything, and says, no. And then flew his way out of there and gone to the government and said, do you know about this Pocket Universe? Are you on board with this? And if so, that's a problem. If not, well, go take a look inside that tent. That's problem number 1 with the Pocket Universe. The second is Metamorpho is, he's the not the changing man. That's a Vertigo book.
Elemental Man.
The Elemental Man. He can change into anything. And Lex Luthor is blackmailing him with his hideous CGI alien baby in a that's across the way, being guarded by a person who is there sometimes and not there at other times, mostly when it's convenient for him to not be there. Metamorpho sits there and he changes his arm into a kryptonite block, thus depowering Superman. Lex brings in a street vendor who had helped Superman up out of a crater in one of the earlier battles, plays some Russian roulette, blows his head off, tells a funny joke, because that's the kind of movie we're dealing with here. And Superman is like, help me. Can you please turn off your kryptonite hand? And the guy's like, no, I'm afraid he's got my son. Then the Russian roulette scene happens, and then they're left alone. And Superman's like, please help me. I can help your son. And Metamorpho's like, you can help my son? Yeah, that's what I told you yesterday. Please pay attention. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he, breaks his son out. And then the Pocket Universe, from what I was observing, and you guys have seen it twice, can tell me, I know there's the giant black hole or the proton rift that's ripping its way towards
the black hole,
just like in Returns. I'm sorry. We're talking about a wholly original picture here. The universe collapses, right? Because Mr. Terrific and Lois Lane show up, and they get Metamorpho, Superman, Crypto, the baby out of there just in time before it collapses. So are we to assume that everybody who's been held prisoner inside that pocket universe, which goes on for the fields of human bodies mentioned in the Matrix, it's that big, they're all just dead? And there's no time. Okay,
no, they describe it as that portal collapsed.
They came out at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I missed.
No,
that.
it's just that portal is collapsed. They mentioned in.
Hey, Don. Don.
I got
no reason to be a jerk. Okay, I missed the detail, and I'm asking a question. That's why I set it up. For those who had watched it more than once, please help me.
They mentioned they add while Superman's in the pocket universe with Metamorpho, he mentions that there are multiple portals, so they aren't trapped in there, and it wasn't collapsing. The reason they were rushing towards the specific portal because that was the one towards Metropolis, and it was the one that was open, because the other ones Metamorpho, because Superman says, "Hey." Metamorpho goes, can we go to one of those portals, I guess, because you can see them in the distance. There's multiple portals, and Luthor mentioned earlier that there were multiple portals. He could jump around the world if he wanted to, which is why he goes to the one foreign country. The reason they were rushing towards the one is because even Superman says, well, they have to be opened. Metamorpho goes, well, how are we going to do that? He's like, we'll figure it out. The reason they rushed was because Mr. Terrific had opened that portal and it was over by Metropolis. So that's why they were rushing. That portal was collapsing, not the whole universe. It was just that portal that was collapsing. And
I guess I got confused because Mr. Terrific, when he's talking to Lois Lane about these portals, I think it was either him or maybe it was Superman talking to Luthor or something. But when the portals are introduced or early on, they're talking about how you've opened up these pocket dimensions with these portals all over the place. They are very unstable, and they could collapse in on themselves, which would be very bad. On top of that, they were dealing with the prospect of a black hole opening up inside the pocket dimension on top of the proton river or something. So the stakes are very uneven in this pocket universe. Either the entire world's going to get sucked into a black hole, or they're going to get sucked down into a proton thing, or the portal's going to collapse. I don't know who's dead on the inside, and if they're not, why or how. And
again, and I totally get that. And like I said, the pocket universe part was the weakest point for me. I wish they would have did it something different. I fully agree with that. And it was just the portal that was collapsing because he was trying to shut the entire thing down. That's what he was trying to do with his code. That's what Mr. Terrific said. He was trying to shut the universe down, but that portal itself had collapsed because it had been open too long. And he does mention a line like that. So the reason I can understand the confusion, though, is because earlier, and again, it's why I have a problem with this whole sequence, is you do have the internal black hole, which presents a problem later on. And again, if it wasn't for that, I probably would have enjoyed this film more. I am with you on this. I wish they would have handled that threat differently, and it has been handled differently before. And I think they were just going for a bit spectacle. I will give a nod that I am happy they're acknowledging Quest for Peace. Thank you very much. So what? He gets Superman's DNA from a hair, like in Quest for Peace. He creates a dumber version of Superman, like in the Quest for Peace.
Because it worked so well in Quest for Peace.
Right. No, look, I'm not saying it's right. I chuckled inside when he said he got a piece of DNA.
We don't like the techno Lex Luthor and Man of Steel, so let's bring back a techno Lex Luthor.
Mark, I gotta
show them how to do it.
This movie made me understand something about Superman: The Quest for Peace. That is a decent Superman movie, completely crippled by terrible special effects and a low budget. Because if you look at the concept of what is going on there with the fight in Metropolis and going up to the moon and all of that stuff, it's great.
Sure.
But you're also talking about a 1987 canon
film that was they were on their last legs, literally turning off the lights on the set when they weren't around. And that's why He-Man is the way it is, because they literally He-Man literally ran out of money, and they shut the lights off on the set and they weren't done shooting, and they had to shoot only a few coverage shots, and that's why that end sequence in He-Man is the way it is, and that's why Quest for Peace was the way it is, because that was canon at its way. And you're right, there's a lot of concept. There's a whole sequence in Quest for Peace dealing with a Bizarro type character, which again alludes to what they do with Ultraman, only much worse. In it, the first time Lex tried to clone Superman, he created this more of a Bizarro type Superman, and that whole sequence was cut from Quest for Peace. Again, I see the warts and all for Superman and what they were trying to do. I guess for me, it didn't bug me that much, and also I give them props again because having followed this so close and being criticized quite a bit for my opinion of, say, Batman v Superman, which my own kids won't let me live down for the rest of my life. I will be on my deathbed and my kids go, yeah, Dad, you know, Batman v Superman sucked, right? And they just bait me.
They're gonna marry a woman named Martha just to spite her.
Yep, that sounds
You know,
about right.
honestly,
Martha,
the opening
why
of
are
Batman.
you using that name?
I'll trade every mistake in this movie for that. Just
The,
yep,
the,
that one
the,
could stay there.
the opening of Batman
Awful.
v Superman was great. The battle from I think it was a nice bit of Snyder course correcting some of the criticism, whether it was he was thinking about that or if he had it in mind all along. But you know, Bruce Wayne going through Gotham trying to save people during the Battle of Metropolis, I thought that was some really great stuff and really great heroism before he even puts on the batsuit.
If you don't mind me, and I do want to know Katie's opinion, because I know I have my idea of the characters, the female characters in here, and I really want to ask you because I'm a guy, so I couldn't tell you. But I know it's a shock. I know it's a shock to everyone.
Well,
I am.
You're saying you don't know any women, Mark? I don't know what to tell your wife about.
I know I've been married 27 years, but I do want to just get another opinion on the female characters, namely Hawk Girl, who I think was a bit underutilized in this, and Miss Tessmacher. What did you think of their portrayal or their version of Miss Tessmacher in this?
Is Miss Tessmacher Ava?
Yeah, Ellie. Basically the same.
Eve Tessmacher.
Eve Tessmacher.
Eve.
Yeah, Eve.
I thought Miss Tessmacher was very much a representation of, you know, what she would be today. The whole thing with taking the selfies, and especially like taking the selfies when the stuff's going on in the background, because this is a whole universe where people are bored. They know metahumans. They don't care. It's like when a guy's drinking a latte and has his phone, like it's no big deal because, oh, must be another Tuesday. When she's like doing that, that's very much 2025. Like I thought that was great. And the fact that no one thought that she was going to be, you know, the Woodward and Bernstein of Lex's plans, because she's like taking all the selfies and the sexy shots. Like, here's Lextovria, here's this. And it's like, why is she sending me all these things? It's like every giveaway is in every one of her selfies. And it's like, even Jimmy Olsen doesn't see it. It's like, well, yeah, I guess. But it's like, it's
Lois Lane saw it.
Yeah, it's the fact that Lois is like, oh my God, she's a genius. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's right there. Everything is right here. And no one pays attention to her, which is their downfall. But this universe is so different from everything else because everyone knows what a metahuman is. They're not impressed. They're not. It's very much like today with fake news. Everything is fake news. Everything is different. But we have a Superman who can be injured, which is very different. And that's something that kids don't see. Now, I will say, I do agree with something that was on this panel. I am from the border of Missouri and Kansas. I have been in Kansas many, many, many times. And I was greatly offended by that. Oh, Clark, I don't know if we can take this phone. The rotary thing's not working, but you be a good boy with your paw. Me and Paul are going to do that. I did not like that at all. Knowing everyone that I know from Kansas, I was offended, and I hate Kansas because I am from the border of Missouri. But that, to me, I did not like that at all. I've always seen, Mr. Kent as, as you've said, salt of the earth, very stoic. They put the everything they installed in Clark to be the person that he is. So when he has the whole thing with his birth parents, the thing that's supposed to make him feel good about himself is when he found out like who he was, and then realizing that basically they just wanted him to take over the world and all that stuff. That is an arc, because that's someone who is like, look, these are the people who I thought were supposed to install everything that I'm supposed to know about myself. But the fact is, they didn't. They're basically an illusion. They may have given birth to me, but it's the people who raised me. It's, nature versus nurture. And that's the thing. That is Clark's arc. It's like he had to realize, and he did at the end when he changed his ways from, it's like, what made him feel good is like seeing the people who loved him for him and made him who he is. One thing that is a question for me, and this is the thing that I said that I had a question about, in the whole, from what I gather in the comics, Kara-El is supposed to be there and go down to Earth to like mentor Clark and all that stuff. That's what I've gathered from what I've heard. Mm-hmm. When she gets there and that he's already a grown man, my question is, if that transmission from his parents is correct, wouldn't she also have those same beliefs that they're supposed to be taking over the earth and all that stuff? And if so, aren't they supposed to be enemies from the get-go? Because they would have like very different like mentality of what's supposed to be going on with their Kryptonian blood and how they're supposed to be moving forward with this. I love the movie. I thought it was great. I do have an issue with the Russian roulette. I also know this is a generation that grew up with active shooter drills, good or bad, which, I mean, obviously is very, very awful and very, very bad. But I was very surprised that they did do the Russian roulette. It is PG-13. So, I mean, if parents are taking that, I don't know if there's a trigger warning or if there's a warning for that for parents for kids. I do think there should be, because even if it's far away, you still see a little bit of blood and all that stuff. I thought the whole thing with Lex being all for the hate and all that stuff, he's a guy filled with hate. He's a bitter Betty for whatever reason it is. And yes, should he get a Nobel Prize for doing a pocket universe? Should he get a Nobel Prize for cloning? Yes, but the fact is that his hate totally like outdoes any of that for Superman so much that he doesn't care about all the accomplishments that he has, because he hates Superman that much more. I think it's a great movie. I look forward to seeing a sequel. I think Gunn has a great way with making the comic universes that he has his own, but also staying true to a number of factors of the comics, while also bringing in the modern day mentality and modern day aspects that go in. And right now, that's all I have to say. And David, would you like to speak? Because I know you've been as quiet as I have been for the past hour and 10 minutes.
He's got a mouthful of popcorn.
I appreciate what you're saying. The whole Russian roulette thing, when that happened, I was like, oh, we're getting a more comic accurate Luthor. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I've never been a huge fan of Gene Hackman as Luthor. I think his performance is good. I just never liked the way they wrote him as Luthor. I thought it was just too comical, too jokey, and it wasn't that much of a threat to Superman. Same thing with Spacey in Superman Returns. As both of them, like Mark was saying, are land grabbers. Just like, unfortunately, Nicholas Holt's character is here. It's like, really? We're revisiting this again? What I did like about Hoult is that he was relatively the same. He is relatively the same age as Superman here, which is different for us. I mean, yeah, we saw that in Smallville and everything, but I'm talking about big screen. So it was nice to see, like, almost like, if if Luthor would get over himself, maybe, I mean, can you imagine if they could team up and the good that they could do? But no, he's too jealous and too petty and too narcissistic to go there. And I thought some of the stuff that Luthor was doing was kind of funny, like when he was pitching Planet Watch. I'm like that was kind of funny. He's like, Planet Watch, like Team America, World Police, or something.
Mhm.
It was a little ridiculous. Again, I feel like this is probably the most comic book-y movie that DC has ever done.
Mhm.
Because we've seen the gritty and what if this were real? Even the Batman, which I like. I'm so used to different iterations of these characters that I had no problem with this. I have some problems with this. Okay, so let me back up. I have no problem with this presentation. Some of the things here I have a problem with. Yes, Mom and Pa Kent, I think, were kind of miscast. I would have liked to have seen somebody like Tracy Letts as Pa Kent or something like that. I don't know. Not that these actors are bad. It's just, again, the way they're written and the time that we spend with them is a little too quick. It's like, okay. I did like, this. It's interesting how this is the first time that, I guess it makes sense. They've been dating for 3 months, but this is the first time Lois has met Mom and Pa Kent, and I like that. His room is the same and all that stuff. So she's seeing him more as a man than a Superman, and to me, that's kind of like what James Gunn is going for. This is more about the man than the Superman. This is the first time we've seen Superman like right from the get-go. He's battered, bloodied. It's a new take. It's different. It's just again, I'm used to seeing different takes, different iterations, whether it be one-shot graphic novels or a limited series. I'm fine with that. The Superman robots are straight out of All-Star Superman. For the most part, that's where they got them from. Fine, cool. It is a little contradictory to say you're a motionless robot, yet you're really concerned and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Maybe they pride themselves in saying that, but they really aren't, and that's the joke. I don't know. And you know what? I don't really care about that. The big thing for me was, some of the best moments in this movie are really between Superman and Lois. The interview that they had in the apartment was great. I love he's making breakfast for dinner. He's wearing the white shirt and the slacks from Superman 2, and it's just it's there's some nice callbacks to a lot of movies and a lot of comics, but the heart of that conversation is really just kind of two people trying to hash out their ideologies, and I enjoyed that. It sounded like a real relationship. I even liked that moment where he's just taking he needed a breather, and he's coming back to his, or I guess it's their place, and there's that whole background fight with Justice playing in the background. But I like that he was like, I just need a breather here. Here's just a guy who needs to sit with his hot cocoa and the woman he loves, and just work things out and regroup. He's
right.
First and foremost, like Katie was saying, it's nurture. That he grew up with this kind of like Midwestern decency, even though in this movie it's kind of stereotypical, but he was raised with this goodness, and for him to I'm not a fan of the second part of that biological parent message, but when he realized that, it kind of knocked the wind out of him, I don't mind that iteration at all. I'm not crazy about what Gunn did with that message from the biological parents, but hey, it's like Don was saying, it's a bold choice, and it's not something that we've seen before. So, well, yes, you could say, that was General Zod's plan and everything, but I'm talking about from the perspective of the parents.
Mhm.
Was there I did come out of the movie, at least for the first time I saw it, wishing that there was maybe more time spent on like Superman, how he feels, how he, what's going on internally with him. But and I know there's a lot to juggle here, and I felt like for the most part it was a pretty good balancing act with all these characters, and it was a good cast.
See, and there was an opportunity for that, and I totally agree with you on that, and also because I know Jeff and Ian have also brought it up. There was an opportunity, and it is jarring both times I watched it, just how quick Lex is ready to draw Superman out, doing the whole. I would have liked another beat, another day with him recovering on Kent's farm as he's recovering, learning about Ma and Pa Kent. As stereotypical as they are, we needed a few more of those beats. And you needed Lex Luthor regrouping and then coming to this extreme possible solution rather than just knee-jerking it and going, hey, I'm going to do this. I think if you get a beat, and I know the movie's long, I get it, but I think that's where you put that in. If you want your Superman trying to process just about everything he just learned, the people he idolized actually are folks that wanted him to, take over the planet, more ways than one. I think you can do it there. Plus you get to learn about why Ma, Pa, and Kent, how influential they are, but they don't do that. And it is missing in that point. And that's where you would put it. Even just a 5-minute scene section where you put in a little time where he's recovered enough, and you get to see Lois, who I really loved in this. I kept seeing her, and I kept seeing the comic. Her look, how they got Lois, I was like, no, wait, this is live action, because she looked like a lot like the different comics I've read. She looks very much the part, and she acted, I thought, the part. But you could have put that beat in there. So that is missing. I will fully admit. That's where they could have put that in there, given a little breather and give us a little more character moments. And they gave us more action instead of character moments in this.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all of this movie was. I mean, you could have removed the Justice Gang and had, I mean, with the exception of Mr. Terrific, well, Hawkgirl does something at the end, which is, it's played for comedic, like sort of ghoulishly triumphant effect, but it really says something about her character and what this Justice Gang is supposed to represent, where the president of Baravia has been conspiring with Lex Luthor in this deal to start a war with the neighboring Jaranpur country. Lex is going to come out on top by conquering that country. Sorry, Baravia conquers that country. Lex is guaranteed his own portion of it, which he's going to call Luthorville or something like that, Lutherstan. And that's their grand plot. Now, the president of Baravia is found out, and at the end of the film, during the whole conflict, Hawkgirl takes him and basically throws him down a mountain and kills him. And, he says, "You're not going to kill me. You're with Superman or something," and she says, "I'm not Superman." She drops him to his death. That might be, I guess, satisfactory to some people, but if you're talking about a film and a story that is kind of foundationally rooted in the tradition of truth, justice, and the American way, I know that's hokey and can be derided and picked apart, but that's not what Superman stands for. And in this film, there's no consequence for Hawkgirl. No one ever says, hey, what happened to the president of that country, especially because this movie, we're talking about that interview scene between Lois and Superman at the beginning of the film, where she is digging into him. I agree, it is a strong scene, but it's a scene that, again, 0 out of 10 stars to this movie. They do nothing with it. They could have made an entire story about that political conflict and its ramifications, including involving, literal superpowers. But they just they not only drop it, but they contradict what they're trying to set up earlier in the film. Because Lois is saying, what right did you have to interfere in a political battle between two countries? And Superman's argument is, what, people were going to die. I'm like, okay, you've been on the planet for 33 years. You've been Superman for 3 years. And this is the first time you've noticed in the newspapers that there might be a conflict where people are going to die.
We don't
What are
know
you
that.
doing here, Superman? Well, I mean, how naive is this guy? He's an ace reporter for the Daily Planet. Why is he picking this battle to interfere in? And on top of that, the whole idea is, well, you shouldn't get involved in this battle. It's not your place. And yet at the end, what happens? He calls in the Justice Gang to get involved in the battle and interfere. And then you've got, picking a side where Hawkgirl drops the guy, to his death. I guess everybody, the entire government system and all the people of Baravia who installed that person or whatever are supposed to be corrupt and evil, and the people of Jaranpur are, the harmless, unarmed good guys. It's very black and white and one-dimensional, and it belongs in this movie because it's dumb. But for someone who wants to go see a movie that is actually about things, and a movie that sets up themes and conflicts in the opening 10 minutes, I want to see those things resolved and not just, thrown down the side of a mountain.
Everybody.
I think that's your meeting. That's your meeting between Flag and Maury at the end. Going, I guess the superheroes are running the show, and that's the hint that consequences are coming because you're not going to fit all that in a 129-minute movie. But I get the pose you need, but the threads are still there. It can be done.
Do you believe that there's going to be a consequence to the president of Baravia for Hawkgirl in the next film, or is it going to be mentioned ever again?
No clue. Or we're going to have these 2-year passages of time between the next movie where, for all we know, it's a title crawl. Oh my gosh, you're not going to get all those things, Ian. No movie's going to give you that. I mean,
Well,
Is there gonna be
there are.
Are there
Yeah.
going to be any consequences for what Lex has done?
Hawker.
Well,
I
he
mean, I
is
know
hauled
he
off.
kinda
He
got
is hauled off to
canceled,
jail. Yes,
Yeah.
They
Off
throw him in the
to jail
back of a.
red.
Yeah, and Hawkgirl's
Yeah,
not.
he's going to the prison where the Suicide Squad was. So
Mhm.
yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, we are going to pull over because we are way past time and there's more to discuss. But I do want to get to our chats and super chat, and it's we're going to breeze through these because it's been quite a show. Charlie Brown, Blockhead 50 is back. It's okay, in my own opinion. I believe that's an opinion of the film.
Mhm.
Still better than Man of Steel. This film also made me appreciate Man of Steel so much more. I don't like that movie overall because of the 30 or 40 or 90-minute Battle of Metropolis, however that ends. But in terms of the setup and what they do with establishing that world and how it is different from the Superman we've known from the other films, with Krypton and all that stuff, masterful. Razorblade Mango, we need to outlaw jokes that involve a garage door being slowly opened and it's awkward. Yes.
Fair enough.
I personally enjoyed that one both
I
times.
did too. Yeah.
I guess it's works for a reason. Bradley Cooper as Jor-El kind of threw me off. Lol.
Sure.
The robots are annoying and unfunny. I can't believe Superman is the movie that's creating a spicy kick in the seat review. Hey, they're all spicy in their own ways.
Come on.
They're all spicy.
Yeah.
Caliente. To Jeff's point about tone, in the span of 5 minutes, it zigzags from Superman getting tortured / an innocent getting executed and goofy shenanigans with Lois and Mr. Terrific. It's disorienting.
Kind of like a
Stretch.
comic
Yeah.
book.
Agreed.
No, David, I gotta
That's
push
not
back
true,
on you
David.
and Mark.
But
You
it has
guys
to be a
talk about
movie.
a comic book and flipping through comics. We have to acknowledge that there are comics that we pick up and flip through and put back because they suck. There are great comics and there are lousy comics. And James Gunn has mentioned there was an article where he talked about the inspirations for this movie, the comic book inspirations, and they mean nothing. I was inspired by All-Star Superman, by Superman for All Seasons, by the Silver Age Superman. He basically mentioned every single iteration of Superman. It's like Nolan saying, oh, I was inspired by Joel Schumacher's Batman and the 60s Batman and Burton's Batman and the Dark Knight comics. It doesn't mean anything. By inspired, he means he went through and ripped off stuff, basically cafeteria Catholic his way through the mythology to build something that, frankly, we've seen 100 times before. There's nothing new in this movie except for decisions that characters make that are frankly out of character. Now,
Goyer did the same. Come on.
What?
I mean, in Nolan's fantastic masterworks of film, Goyer did the same thing. That's the loosest version of the Long Halloween you're ever going to get.
No, I mean,
you could do that all day.
Goyer's version, the Goyer Nolan version of the Joker was something that we hadn't seen before
And we're
on
talking
film,
beyond.
anyway.
We're taking angles.
But you're the one who brought up,
But-
you know,
But yes,
I'm-
but like
you brought up
talking
those
about
other filmmakers. I'm
borrowing-
saying that's not what
right, but
I'm
every
talking about.
filmmaker borrows and steals. We have 85 years of history here. What do you expect them to do? You're going to take a piece and apart. Like we're at that
No.
point. We have scores that are mixing Williams' stuff with modern interpretation because we've reached the point where this is an icon and that's James Bond's theme, which might as well be Superman's theme. Like
No,
we're
that's two different things.
that's
Don,
tomorrow.
there's two different things. You're talking about an IP mandate from a studio versus actual creativity. You're going to have a version of John Williams' score in every Superman movie going forward because that's what people know, and that's what
Yeah.
people, you know, it's not going to put asses in seats, but people expect it. Now, could someone write a new grand Superman score that no one's ever heard of? Yes, because John Williams did it almost 50 years ago. When you're talking about creativity and imagination, there are
Yes.
people out there
But
who
this-
can do this and blow people away,
Sure.
but they're
But
hamstrung by
point-
studios and also creators, and I use that term lightly, who
All right.
don't know except to steal.
I'm just you're bitching about par for the course here. They all do it. Marvel does it. DC does it. Like
Right, and
these
that's why I'm
taking-
saying that until
you're taking
James Gunn
long
steps
figures-
down, I'm not going to watch this stuff anymore because
No,
what
but-
you're saying is that
okay.
I have no reason to.
No, but you have all these years of history that you got to boil that you have to pick a route for in a 2-hour film. It's impossible without a piece of this and a dash of that. Like this is like adapting Harry Potter in 2 hours instead of a 10-hour miniseries. Like you just can't do it. So
You
take
can.
your best shot with
Don,
you take your best shot with
in Superman 78, Superman had been around for 40 years at that point.
Yeah.
And they took 40 years of comics lore and distilled it into a 2-hour plus movie. And
even
we've
that
also
is
seen
its
interpretations that have reinvented the characters, whether it's Batman 89, which, you know, took
Very inventive for what it is.
referenced comic books and referenced some elements of other, you know, media at the time to create a bold new vision of the character. It is still possible to do without outright theft.
We just
Now,
got one.
Gunn is ripping off himself, and he's ripping off Snyder, and he's ripping off all the other different interpretations
more
and the
than
comics.
anyone else.
And the idea that we have 85 years of source material, there are still hundreds of stories that have not been adapted from those comics that you could adapt those comics. You could have literally adapted Superman for All Seasons,
Sure.
which touches on the themes, including the origin and the attitudes of the characters that we've known for 85 years, and tells them in a new and visually arresting way. If you had just adapted that with a little bit of connective material, because they're told as 4 vignettes of 48 pages
Unfillable
each,
in 2 hours.
it is perfectly
is.
filmable in 2 hours, because if you look at those comics, they're not dense in the sense that, I mean, there's a lot of splash pages and visual moments in those comics. It's not 45 pages of dialogue. It is 45 pages that you can tell in 1/2 hour each with maybe a 15-minute setup. It can be done.
Well, like what if
Mark.
they had even taken
Like-
like a? Oh, good.
Go ahead. No, Jeff, go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to say to Ian's point, what you're just discussing. What if you took like a story arc from a comic book that goes over 8 issues? There's been hundreds of those over the years. Why doesn't one filmmaker take one of those and say, "I'm going to adapt that for the screen, do some things that make it filmic, or show my interpretation, throw in the little Easter eggs or whatever I want." But I mean, we still have yet to find that, and I'm always sort of amazed at how all these filmmakers like don't show me the Talia character in The Dark Knight Returns when it's not that character. She's such a good character from the comic book. Show her as that character, and don't just use the name to say, "Well, see, I use that character. I have respect for the comic books." No,
That's
you
the
don't,
Marvel
because
complaint,
that's
yeah.
not the character. I think what they could have done here is taken one of the things from those 80 years of lore and history and done it. Even some of the newer stuff, like the All-Star Superman, was very well done and modern in many respects. I mean, the day when the issue where Lois gets to be super for a day is pretty fun. That could have been a nice 15-minute segment in here or something like that if they wanted to. I'm not saying that that's exactly right, but one of the problems I had, and I said this originally about Siegel and Schuster, is like they have all this wonderful stuff for all these years, and nobody seems to want to tap into that. It's always my interpretation. I'm the great auteur, and I get that. It's done all the time. But if you were going to do an adaptation of a novel from a famous author, you would tend to want to try to replicate that. And I just always find it shocking how they just don't want to do that.
See, and that's while I say I've loved this and I do enjoy my other films quite a bit on various levels, I've found entertainment in them. I am finding it interesting that they, well, especially as a DC fan, they continually fall back on the Trinity and they continue to fall back on the same villains. While Batman Begins, and again, Keaton's my Batman. What's his name was okay.
Christian Bale is
Christian
what's
Bale?
his name already?
Christian Bale, thank you. Christian
One of
Bale.
the greatest
Woo!
actors of this generation.
All right, we're just giving you a hard time, Mark.
I'm just kidding.
That's
man.
debatable,
Leave George
but
Clooney alone.
that's
Debatable.
but it gave me it. One of the reasons that I did enjoy Batman Begins, I didn't enjoy his portrayal of Batman per se. I didn't quite like the grovelly in that. I kind of like the dark angle, but I was like, holy crap, we got the Scarecrow. We've not gotten a big screen Scarecrow before. But what do the producers do for that filmmaker at the end of the freaking movie where we've just presented a character that's never been on the big screen before? Oh, he left his calling card, and it was the Joker. And while I'm a DC shill, I love my Batman. Don't get me. I rolled my eyes when that happened because I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. We're going back to the Joker. It's the same thing with the MCU. These producers they only know the main big guys. They probably aren't really comic book fans, so they don't know or don't bother to look because they think it's what the fans want. I mentioned to Ian the other night on our show, I'm like, I think it was like, I'm disappointed Hasbro fell by the wayside and their studio's kind of fallen apart with their plan. I wanted a Rom Space Hunter. Now, do people know who Rom Space Hunter is? Probably not, but my dad read that comic and I read that comic, and there's some wild stuff you could do with that. I wanted my Mask movie. I mean,
Mattel is doing a Hot Wheels movie, apparently.
But there are so many. Look at the variety, and you all are Marvel fans. You know the plethora of characters, and I know. Look at the variety of characters you have to choose from. Even your heroes that never got the wide release. And the thing is, by doing one of those characters that may not be well known, you've got a lot more liberty. Ian and Jeff, you guys are right. There's all this legacy with Superman. Everybody knows Superman and how he's supposed to be. Making a change to that is a bold statement.
Well,
but you got to handle it with carefully.
What's that, David?
Oh, we saw that with the Blade movies. Nobody knew really who Blade was. And,
right.
And I think, we have a case of that here, which, kind of to counter your point, Don, about, everything's been done. We have Mr. Terrific, who I have a big problem with how he's presented in this film, because he's much like the Justice Gang. We don't know anything about him. When he shows up in the flying chair with the orbs and everything, I'm like, is he a space alien? I found out about his background later, listening to people talk about him. Sure. He's like a black Tony Stark apparently, or something in this universe, and he's a superhero, and he's big into nanotech. But we literally get nothing about him. I don't know if Hawkgirl is the human version of herself or an alien version of the character. Guy Gardner, okay, I know the other Green Lanterns. Are there other lanterns walking around the planet? Why is he the one that we focus on? Why is he the head of the Justice Gang? And why is he being allowed to be this corporate, the boys knockoff version representing the Lantern Corps on Earth? That's too many questions.
He's waiting for that. He's waiting for that Supercuts endorsement.
I don't mean to laugh, but your exact complaints about Superman is the exact complaints I had about some of the MCU films that other people have praised about. I had the exact same complaints about those films, because there's characters that are introduced that are supposed to be a big deal that I don't know that's a big deal, but the audience erupts when that person shows up. I'm not talking about the main character. I'm talking about some other characters that show up. You're like, you have no background story, but they put them in there for the Marvel. Now, they do it a little excessively in Superman. I will say, if you're not familiar with DC and Mr. Terrific, I am, because literally Mr. Terrific's very prominent right now in the comic book storyline going on as they're leading up to Darkseid coming back. He's very prominent in Justice League Unlimited. He was very prominent in the Arrowverse.
Justice Society.
and Justice Society. He was very prominent in those. But if you're not familiar, you're absolutely right. They introduce him. Guy Gardner, he's a Green Lantern. He's not Hal Jordan, but in all honesty, a lot of people don't know a lot of things about Green Lantern unless you actually read the comics.
Or
except Jon Stewart. I'm very excited.
I know people forgot about it because it's a terrible film, but we had a big screen version of Green Lantern
we did
17 years ago with Ryan Reynolds, and I think that was the Hal Jordan version of the character, right?
Yeah.
And
So
it was.
if you're talking about like, hey, look, we've got the Green Lantern on the screen, but it's this weird guy with a bowl cut named Guy. What is going on with that? And Mark, I take your point, but the difference between what you're talking about, what Superman does here in the Marvel example, the Marvel films at least establish who those characters are. Now, what you're speaking to specifically is Easter egg characters. I think at the end of probably the Eternals, when the one character shows up and there's a reference to this sword of this blade, and people are like, oh my God, that means it's going to be Blade and this other character. That's meant to be a tease for a future film. I have not seen a Marvel film where they drop a character in and who is an important character to the story, and they don't explain who they are, where they came from, and what their power set is.
I think
I can't think of
you
one.
got some loose. You don't
Collector.
get Hawkeye's. Yeah, you
The
don't get
Collector.
Hawkeye.
Why
Yes,
does
you
he-
do. He was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was working for them, and he was good with bows and arrows, and he doesn't have powers. They established that in the first 5 minutes.
Why
Right.
is
But,
that
if
one
you're
guy
looking for the rest
collecting?
of it? You got to wait till
Why is the one
Ultron.
guy collecting galaxy parts? Why is he working with the Asgardians? Why?
Or
That's all established. That's all established in the films. He's a universe.
The
He's
Warriors
a
3.
cosmic collector.
Yeah.
It's all in the film. I
I don't know his background. I don't know
The
anything
Warriors
about. All I
3
know is
and
he's a
4. Fun tactics,
collector.
simple as that.
Why is he a collector? Why does he collect it? Why do people trust him with items versus other things? We don't get that. I'm just making
Mark,
up similar points that you're bringing up.
No, that is very different. That is a character who shows up for, I think, one scene, and he's brought back later on. But that's like asking the guy on the corner who's selling hot dogs, what's his story? It's not. It's important to the story in that it sets up something that's going to happen in the movie. These are main characters who are running around, who are crucial to saving people and also causing a lot of trouble. If you're going to introduce the Justice Gang, also, as I said at the beginning, I don't know the relationship with Superman. Nobody respects him. They make fun of him. When he shows up to try and clean up, when he tries, well, okay, but here's another thing. Everybody in Jarhanpur is calling out for Superman. The little boys raising the flag. They respect Superman, but nobody else in the film seems to understand him as a singular entity. Why wouldn't they be calling out for Justice Gang, come get me? I know, aside from the fact that it's a Superman movie.
Because Superman saved him the first time, and that's why they were calling for Superman again, because they were calling for him to come back and save him again from the invaders. Now, as far as
in the street, there's doubts when he's exposed. The government still says, "Hey, let's wait and see how this turns out." Like, it's not instant doubt in the guy.
But this guy's been around for 3 years.
Yes,
and yet the movie treats him as if he's the new kid on the block that's still trying to earn his respect with the other metahuman.
Until there's doubt put in place by what Lex says. Like, you see citizens that love him. Citizens are used to him. The line the guy says to him, picking him out of the hole, "You always tell us to take care of this. Now it's our turn to take care of you." My goodness.
Those are contradictory story elements you're dealing with. Is he the guy that people, love and adore because he's helped Metropolis before, or is he someone that can't be taken seriously? Why is he not part of the Justice Gang? Was he never invited? Did he turn it down? Like, what is
maybe his tactics like dropping dictators off of mountains.
But that's something that's not established. What would he put up with knowing? Would he put up with knowing that he was dealing with someone like Hawkgirl, or would he try and is there an overseeing committee of these metahumans who have been on Earth for 300 years to deal with problems of metahumans? And how is it that Superman has been around on Earth, exposed as a super person, and the first time he loses a fight is 3 years in? That's not even comics accurate. That's just dumb. On top of that, he loses his first fight in 3 years, and then we spend the next 2 hours watching the course of a week where he constantly gets beat up and loses fights.
Right, because they built up. They do establish that and set it up. Not I'm going to say not very well. I understand what you're saying, but they do bring it in, and they do set up the fact that Lex had been studying and gathering as much information as possible for 3 years, and this was him pulling the trigger on his entire solution. They do present that. So the reason he's losing his first battle in 3 years is because Lex has finally devised a villain, a opponent that could actually beat him. Now, I will give you, they don't say that in here, but they do bring up the fact that he's been studying Superman since the beginning in back and forth quick dialogue between Lex's lackeys, who are his collection of villain minions,
including Otis Berg.
But they do, I will give them, they do establish he's been studying him for years. It took him a while to get the clone in it. What we're seeing now is the culmination of those first 3 years of them pulling it together, and that's why he lost his first battle, because Ultraman is a clone of him. He's basically fighting himself. We don't know it at the time.
I understand. I understand how the plot works, Mark. What I'm saying is the realism. If you're looking at comic books, if you had 3 years of a Superman comic or Superman series where Superman won every battle, was never defeated, that would be completely boring. I have, and granted, I am pulling in from other media.
Why they don't show that version of the story again.
But in what version of the Superman movies have we seen where he has never lost a battle? He has been bested. He has had to pick himself up, back up and fight on to live another day. But we haven't watched 3 movies of Superman winning all the time. It just doesn't match with what with the character in the comics, because or in the other movies. In fact, we talk about Lex Luthor, from the Gene Hackman era. Superman arrives on Earth, and the first challenge he really encounters is a supervillain whose brain is his greatest strength, and he has to find a way to outsmart Luthor, and he ultimately loses, and has to do that cheat where he rewinds the world because Lois Lane dies, right? Yeah. So what I'm talking about is a reality in which metahumans have been around for 3 centuries. This is a problem the movie sets up in its opening title card. We see 5 of them on the planet. They're all in America, all centered around this one city. Are we supposed to believe that we don't have, like in the DC Comics universe, 50 other, metahumans running out, and a Green Lantern Corps, another league of supervillains who are trying to hatch monsters and other interdimensional things?
You're going to call it more over stuff than you think.
Hold on. I get what he's saying.
You can't get all that shit in one movie.
Then don't put that as your premise in your opening title.
It's the same complaint I have.
Put it in the premise and not in the movie.
Here's the thing, though.
Do something simpler. Just do something simpler.
Text.
Well, no. No, what I'm saying is
Bud Collier's voice to come in and tell us who he is, and then we jump from tall buildings and sing about.
No, Don. What I'm saying is, I think there are simpler stories to be told here. Again, I think it's Superman fighting for his own time and stuff here. I mean, I'll say this one thing, and this is right up Mark's alley, so he's going to love me for this. But I think DC has done very well on television. I think The Flash, I think Green Arrow, and especially Supergirl, the first couple seasons were terrific. Now, one of the things I liked about that they did with Kara in that is that sometimes she had to figure stuff out with her brain. It wasn't always that she could fly fast or she was strong. I think something like that from some of the Superman world would have been a little more interesting here. And ultimately, that's kind of what, to some degree, Lex Luthor challenges Superman with. And the thing is, like, can you be in 2 places at once? Okay, that's which one do you choose? It's a moral dilemma, as well as can you really possibly do that? Sure. I think a little of that without some of these other characters as much. That's where I'm, again, I know it sounds like an old fart purist, but there's so many great stories that haven't been done here, and we haven't ever seen them done. Yeah. That's the thing. Every auteur comes in, Christopher Nolan and all these people. It's like, why do you rewrite all the rules? Why do you rewrite 80 years of character and equity and everything else? I just think there's ways to do it where you could say, oh, wow, that's like that one thing from that famous thing from the 70s or something. And yet expand it a little bit, make it more cinematic, et cetera, et cetera.
It's fully, you're right, and it's the lacking in general of all comic book films, either whether from DC or Marvel. And I'm not trying to play the fence, but it's the same complaint. What you guys are complaining about with Superman was the complaints I had for years after they created the Marvel combined cinematic universe. You have, because they weren't bringing the threats to ground level until Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts, I believe what they had going on there, that I believe why you had those superheroes there at the time to take care of that threat, because of the time frame they had everything in that made sense. But there's been other Marvel films, especially, but also DC as well. I'm not going to, in the comic book films in general, when they start doing the combined universe, you got to start to go, where are the other heroes? And that's where the printed comics do better than the movies do, because whenever you're flipping through the comics and you're like, hey, there's this big global thing, you're flipping through, where's everybody else? And you're like, well, here's either everybody else taking care of another crisis on Earth and saying, hey, I can't get there right now, or they're on their way to help with it, but they're included. And I get, I get what you're saying.
You're exactly right to invoke Marvel, because I mean, I have enjoyed the Marvel films up to a certain point. I think they really should have stopped after Endgame, but in the Eternals, the climax of that movie is the giant, budding Eternal head popping out of the earth and basically being frozen there, and they don't deal with that idea as a story point ever. They put it as a jokey little headline in like She-Hulk on a newspaper or something like that later on, but that's not a resolution. It's an acknowledgement like, hey, we got to screw this up. Remember this thing? By drawing attention to it, but not addressing it. Now they finally did that with
Brave New World.
Brave New World, harvesting that. But again, that was what, 4 or 6 years later. I'm not sure.
At least 6 later. And not only that, but then they're screwing with the origin just to establish adamantium so that they can get the X-Men in there. So I mean, both sides, the studios in general, there's a reason why initially these comic book films, when they first started out and why we fell in love with them, they did, because one, they picked guys from the indie scene. They picked indie horror guys who knew how to work and tell a story with very little. Whether you liked them or not, they picked from that, and those films were fairly successful. But after they get successful, the studios are like, well, we get more money behind this, and now they've got more input. I remember an interview with Deadpool guys. They said the reason why the first Deadpool worked so well was because they were limited on budget. So they could only do so many for a comic book film. They were right. And one of them even said, I think it was either the director or one of the writers said, I hope they don't give us a bigger budget for the next film. He literally said that, because the bigger these budgets get, the more the studio wants to have input, because they're putting more money behind it. And in the end, you've got people who really aren't familiar with the material making these decisions. And if you're a director, you could get booted halfway through the project, which we've seen if you start butting heads with a producer. And
that's a fair fear to have, Ian and Jeff, for sure.
It is.
There's a version where this can only get bigger and gaudier. I get that.
And I think my one of my many complaints is that we're dropped into the middle of a universe that's already bigger and gaudier, but without the explanation of what is going on with this timeline that you've set up. Now,
and that's fair.
I want to. I said we're going to pull over for comments. That was like 25 minutes ago.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are there more comments?
Let's go through these.
I'll just leave. Bye, guys.
No. Petty. Yes, our Argentinian super fan and super friend. Hi, everyone. Come on, people, give some love to the panel with some good likes. Yes, thank you. Vito. I love Mr. Terrific. I do too. I just wish I knew more about him.
Well, you're going to get to know more about him, thank God, because they're going to give him his own spin-off series. Sorry.
Wow.
No, there should be a giant cane.
It's almost 10.
No. That's pretty on point, Vito says, when you remember what happened to Gunn himself, Duder. I don't remember what that is referring to, Vito, but
He said Duder.
Yes.
when he almost lost his career and Superman being rejected by the crowd was sort of a reflection on that, I think.
Yeah. Possibly, yeah. The whole cancellation thing.
Yeah.
Those are some tweets, all right. Razorblade Mango is back with, the whole Metamorpho bit was ridiculous. Why did he start crying at the innocent guy getting shot? Has he not seen plenty of cruelties while imprisoned in the Pocket universe? That's one. I mean, he's sensitive, and I can see not being jaded by that. I also know how long he's been imprisoned there. The one thing I do want to
Sounds
say,
like he just got there.
yeah, I am going to pull over based on this point, because Katie, you were mentioning something about the people of Metropolis, the guy sipping the latte while there's monsters and stuff all over the place is very casual. I understand that as an idea, and it's kind of cute, and that's something that belongs in Robot Chicken, but not in a movie where there are people throwing each other through buildings and stuff. I don't care how many of these fights you've seen. If you've got people wrestling outside your window, you're not going to be, kind of nonplussed. Don't even get me started on the whole, like, oh, we evacuated this city in 10 minutes. Like maybe weave in this, you know what? Give Lex Luthor a government contract to develop these pocket universe portals as a way to quickly evacuate people when metahumans start fighting, and then he shaves some off to do something nefarious. Because this whole idea of like we've got these dominoes toppling. Everyone was all mad at Zack Snyder at the end of Man of Steel when he was like, all this collateral damage. You have the same thing here, but it's presented in kind of a cute and comic strippy kind of way. So it's okay. Yeah. I don't buy it. Okay. Rant over.
Well, no, but yeah.
Yeah. Petty says Lois is about as hot as a denim jacket in winter. She's bad casted. Crypto works. Petty, couple of things.
Oh. She's not bad casted, Petty. That is wrong.
She's my favorite Lois.
You're wrong.
Okay. She's poorly written. I think she's well cast, and as the one person on the panel who has been in the room with and spent quality time with Miss Rachel Brosnahan, I can tell you, she is not as hot as a denim. I don't know if a denim jacket winter is like meant to be a dig. I don't understand the reference, but she is a very pleasant woman in many ways. And crypto does not work. I'm sorry. Crypto is shiny object filmmaking at its worst. Hi, random people, says Kim Femberger. Congrats on this video. Finding me. I didn't know we were looking, but cool. Hey. As I don't know any of you, I'm just here to say I love the movie and the entire cast. Well, I hope you've loved this conversation. Damn. Petty. This super chat is just to take the number one from Charlie Brown Blackhead 50.
Wow.
I appreciate that.
There's even fighting in the comments.
I know it's getting scrappy in there. How is he supposed to spread his seed with kryptonite condoms? Well, unless those condoms had holes in them.
I don't know how that makes sense.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, how Superman has sex is always kind of a mystery.
For the real answer,
done very well.
Yeah.
Very, very carefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's the most sensitive of lovers.
He cannot,
for sure.
Yeah, if he's on top, he has to be flying. But yeah,
Tyler Hockman will tell you it worked really good.
If you want to know the secret, go back and watch Mallrats. The answer is there.
Oh,
on top of that, how is he supposed to spread his seed? Probably the same way they're going to spread that dino DNA in Jurassic World. Mini Oreo Henry is freaking bald. Okay. I guess that's Henry Cavill, I imagine. The number one, baby.
Petty for that celebration.
That's
he's
internal stuff.
Take your lap, Petty.
No consequence for killing. I'm not going to say that. I like the punctuation too, getting around the bots. How dare they? Well, I don't know that it was established that the president of Baravia was, that guy, but he was definitely crooked and definitely belonged in a high court and not necessarily high rocks. That background political allegory of combining the Russia, Ukraine, and Israel-Palestine conflicts is something Gunn was clearly not equipped to handle. This is something, a side conversation.
I can't project that, but yeah.
Well, this movie was written a few years ago.
That's what I mean.
I feel like this was more, I think we're projecting these things because they're happening now. But I mean, even in Israel-Palestine, I think that happened probably after this movie was probably being shot. So I get it, but I also agree that none of this stuff belongs in the movie unless this stuff needed to be handled the way they handled the battle in Corto Maltese in Batman as a magazine cover.
Okay. Like
these lunatics.
Okay.
Oh, Vicky Vale.
Yeah.
You're gonna need a long lens. No. I love Allie Knox. These lunatics thought they could make a Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow adaptation as their next movie. Good luck with that. Supergirl. Yes, the teaser poster dropped today.
Go.
And they are cribbing from Shazam. Yay. The whole sipping the soda.
Right.
All great.
We're a piece of bubblegum away, huh? Okay.
Yeah, but no, Supergirl. That was another problem. We kind of touched on it earlier. Kara shows up in the Fortress of Solitude, crashes into it to pick up her dog, which Lois at one point says, "You have a dog," and at no point does Superman say, "No, I'm watching it for my cousin." We non-comic
Not
book
trying to
readers who
reveal,
don't have any familiarity with crypto might think, "Oh yeah, he's just the dog, Superman's dog," but he's dog watching. And she shows up completely drunk, and from what I understand, the plot synopsis of this next Supergirl movie is that on her 21st birthday, she goes into space on this, adventure, and she's going to hook up with Lobo or something. So she's an underage alcoholic who goes to various universes to party on planets that have red suns, meaning she is depowered so she can get intoxicated. So he's got an alcoholic underage cousin who doesn't stop to question, hey, did you know anything about this recording? Do you know anything about my parents being genocidal maniacs? Did my aunt and uncle ever talk to you about this?
Yeah. Or that's her answer of like, I don't want to rule the world. I'm going to get drunk and have a good time. I know.
Yeah, but it doesn't even come up as a point of conversation. You'd think that
in a Superman movie, do it in a Supergirl movie.
No, then don't introduce Supergirl, especially not as this drunk character that's supposed to be the person that we're following in the next movie. What is this, train wreck?
It's actually taken from I believe there's a Supergirl line that they're taking that from where
it's the Woman of Tomorrow. It's the Woman of Tomorrow story.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, and that is up on screen in subtitles during all of Supergirl's 30 seconds here. Wait, no, that didn't happen, so it doesn't count. All right, Supergirl was extremely obnoxious at the end. I don't think I can stomach a whole movie with her, especially with her yelling "bitch" at Superman. Like, seriously? Exactly. Blade Mango. I would have loved a Hans Zimmer score for this film. That score for Man of Steel, I gotta say, that was an original score and did not
keep repeating Mr. Williams as much as we love Williams.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's something.
Nice thought, Tubby.
That was the first
new interpretation of the theme song, though. Like when they had that with the almost like a Top Gun kind of feel to it. I got full body chills. I thought that was I mean, it's John Williams, yet, again, 2025. I actually liked it a lot.
I'm glad
it might have been better if it wasn't used in Batman Returns already.
Well, the other problem that I had with it was it's not John Williams' score. It is this version of the Superman theme run through an electric guitar filter, but it's also chopped up into parts. So you get the dun 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 dun, and then an entirely separate part of the movie. You get the dun dun dun. So it's all it is member berries, and it's a lesser version of something that is powerful. Now I want to say
they need to come up with a new theme and not just because that was the problem. Immediately when they played John Williams' score, I'm going, okay, really? I thought we had Superman Returns. Are we doing that again with the score?
Well, I will say I've dropped something down in the description. I invite everyone to check out. It is a 4.5-minute montage that someone put together. It's links to their YouTube channel. I looked up John Williams' Superman theme yesterday because I wanted to listen to it. And someone had put together on YouTube a beautiful montage of Superman 78 going through all the major beats of the film to the Superman theme. It's a wonderful piece of editing. I want people to listen to that and see how you react to that versus anything that you felt about anything in Superman 2025. That's my challenge to you. Man, Jeff is my spiritual animal in this discussion. All right, you got Jeff and the mango. Love it. Jeff with the John McEnroe look and the last button locked is simply mesmerizing.
I always wear the polo. Thank you, Betty.
Please, Hammer, don't hurt him. Sit happy.
Can I just say that as far as the score goes, Zimmer, this isn't the first time. I know it's not Zimmer doing. Zimmer didn't do the score for Superman, right? Or for this,
Zimmer with a little Junkie XL mix,
a little Junkie XL. But this isn't the first time he has cribbed from another theme. It's in the Dark Knight series as well. They cribbed from Batman's theme as well. It's not the first time he's done that. I'm not excusing. I'm just saying for me too. But that's a whole nother way too long discussion, and I'll shut up. I apologize, but I just say that modern scores in general over the last 10, 15 years, very few of them are stand out anymore. And it's not because of John Williams. It's because of the way they make the films and sound mixing nowadays. It feels like either the composers know most of the music's going to get overdriven and overblown or overcovered by sound effects and other sound design, which is probably what it is, because you can hear themes, but that's about it. I've got a few modern scores, and if you listen to them, they're incidental music, but to the point of they're not really, the Marvel stuff all sounded the same, so it could link together because it's a combined universe. The only problem is most of it sounded the same. So as far as score goes, I get you. I like the new theme of Superman. The score for this film is barely non-existent because it's covered up.
Yeah,
I listened to this album, this Murphy and I forget the other Fleming, right? The two composers on this. Where I listened to this album in isolation today. Just this. I bought the soundtrack on Amazon. I had some digital credits. It was like $7. And yeah, it the incidents where Williams' stuff comes in is where Chop, the way that Ian's talking about it, is true. But like I feel like that's a nice way of just like setting what they want to set up and then flowing for where they want to flow. And the different instrumentation with the guitar helps. And then you've got a few motifs in there. Again, not to a Williams level. No one's at a Williams level, but there's enough different motifs in here to space and pace something else. Like the jazzy riff for Luthor showing up and stuff like that. Like there's pieces here where I can't call this straight ripoff. I
like the lowest
borrow and season with
track.
it.
The lowest track.
What's that?
Park track is really good.
Yeah,
very good track. Yes, like I think there's enough here where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You with something iconic, like I'm trying to say with the Bond theme of like that's the character. That's where we're at now. And yeah, you still have enough of your own flavor in there where if you want to do something of your own as you go.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, the last because we are way over time, but the last thing I kind of tease this at the opening. Lex Luthor's plan.
Okay.
He breaks into the Fortress of Solitude. Uses the engineer to hack the computer in order to find something that he can use against Superman, because he's not going to have the backing of the government to take down Superman unless they have an excuse.
Right.
Finds the message. They decrypt it and blast it to the world and all that stuff. And he uses that as a pretext to bring down Superman. Why, if he had a clone of Superman, couldn't he have put that clone, and he's got a fully programmable clone that will do whatever he wants? Why not just put that guy in a Superman outfit, give him a haircut, and go have him do evil Superman stuff to make it look like Superman blew up a country or did something else, and maybe back pocket that message for the future? He had two Superman clones, honestly, because if Metamorpho can make his body into anything, he could have just used that and not bothered with the Superman, with the Kryptonian hair strand.
I think it's more cover-upable and nefarious to do it where you can organically smear him, turn the public against him, not just do his own evil deeds with the muscle that he's got in his pocket.
If you've got Superman blowing up a building or a school bus full of kids with his X-ray vision.
But see, this... It could come into play too of the exact thing that you had commented in the beginning that bugged you, is that there have been 300 years of metahumans. So if you do put Superman on a rampage, you very well could have a descendant of a lot of the superhumans that you said, that
bring
possibly
more heat
are in the rest of the world, and bring more heat on him that way. I think he was trying to.
If we'd established that there were other metahumans running around in more significant numbers than 5 in one city, maybe that'd be a concern. I like where you're going with this, Mark, and that could have been something to explore with the movie. Like Luthor unleashes this thing that has unexpected consequences that blow back on him as well as Superman. And then how do you deal with that?
Or he's smart enough not to do that because of what we're already thinking about with our armchair quarterback brains, with this scheme that is extremely effective, which is the public smear and
it's extremely effective because the movie. It's extremely effective because James Gunn wrote his movie logic to not match anything in our reality. Now I understand he's trying to get into the whole cancel culture thing,
Metropolis,
but listen. When he's talking about putting up this message and the entire world turns against Superman instantaneously.
Our world has
There's not
that
there's
one. I don't know
no
if they
there's
turn, but I'll-
there is
sure.
there's
We'll play
no
your-
factions. Even look, you've got people today who are figures in media and in politics that do horrendous things all the time, but they don't get instantly
You don't say.
canceled, especially the insanely powerful and connected
I don't
ones.
think Superman gets
There
instantly
is
canceled.
you can look at if you want to talk about Trump or Elon Musk or even going back to Joe Biden, they had plenty of scandals that divided people, that got people talking, but they were until, except in the case of Biden when he was kind of pushed to the side for other reasons, but they're still they come out in a lot of cases stronger than ever and able to do more things. Now, if that had been the case here, it might have been more interesting, but this whole you've got the Justice Gang, you got the Pocky Universe, you got all this other stuff going on. So all he can do with this plot to discredit Superman is have it on fast forward so we can get through that storyline in a couple minutes. And also at the end, he parallels it with, okay, now we've got Lex Luthor being shown for the villain that he is. In the middle of a black hole meta thing about to destroy the city, and that's the thing that people care about. That's what's going to bring Lex down instantaneously. It's like finding out that Rudy Giuliani was having an affair during 9/11. People wait a second, what about those planes?
Right, but no, one Lex has the one huge damning video, and then the Daily Planet has the orgy of evidence of multi-pronged level. The public's going to shift this.
But here's the other thing,
and I don't see full cancellation there. I see a demoralized Superman who hides and heals and figures it out, and then lets his actions show and comes out of it stronger. We have that arc, Ian. Ugh.
No, he does get fully canceled. Now he does come back, and through his heroism, but even that, he's got problems with the other characters disrespecting him, giving him guff. Lex Luthor, that happens at the very end of the movie, so we don't know exactly how that's going to play out. Maybe he will use his money, power, and influence to get his way back up to the top. Maybe he gets into the back of that military transport, and instead of going to Belle Reve, it drives right back up to his mansion. I mean, that would be kind of interesting to see as an opening to the next film. Yeah. But what I'm saying is you introduce these things that are meant to, this takes place in our world. I know people are saying this is a Silver Age comics, but we've got internet drama and monkeys and other dimensions typing nasty things on Twitter. So it's supposed to represent things happening today on some level, or at least something the audience can relate to.
In that prison,
but there's not anything to parallel the way people would react to that stuff today, because there would be instant skepticism from at least half the people of Metropolis and at large half the country. People would say, wait a second, that footage of Lex Luthor, that was probably doctored. How do we know that's the truth? Oh, that news outlet that's putting up there, they're biased. They hate Lex Luthor anyway. I'm a Fox News person or whatever the equivalent is in Metropolis. I don't believe this nonsense from the mainstream media. I'm saying this movie tries to be about 50 things, and in doing so, it's about nothing because it doesn't stick to one story to explore. It has all these things that are they're on top of the speeding bullet rushing towards the next movie. Anyway, thank you for that dismissive ending, Don.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I'll take the bullet.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the end of Superman 2025. And also, as promised, the last of these films that I'll be talking about. Most folks on this show have their own shows or own forums, and I invite you in the coming 5 to 10 years, or maybe 1 year, if my dreams come true, to go visit their channels for coverage of the future installments of this, because you will not be seeing that here. For more information on that, you can reference the video where I made my pact, which I don't think it's down below yet. I got to get on that and put a link there, but you can watch it very soon. And I would like to thank all of you who tuned in on the live or later on, as the case may be. We appreciate your input and your comments and your lively debate. Oh wait, hold on a second. A couple last comments. This was an extremely enjoyable conversation. Huge props to everyone. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, made it
very
much.
Hi, Patty.
Thank you for the call outs.
Yes.
Hi,
and I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of my patient and scrappy and very engaged panelists here, and dare I say, my friends. I'm going to take the spoiler banner off because I want to make sure everyone gets a good look at you. Wait a second. Hold on.
They don't need to.
What? Okay, I got
the logo again. Hold on.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Jeff York of The Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artist, Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive and Every Movie Has a Lesson, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, Mike Crowley of YPA Reviews, you'll probably agree, the DC shill Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of Special Mark Productions and the Spoiler Room Podcast, and of course, Katie Glidewell, the blonde in front. Always repping with the swag and the awesome do and outfit. You are you forget comic accurate movies. You are straight out of the pages, ma'am, and I appreciate it. So thanks everyone. Please support all of Earth's Mightiest critics. Their information and links are down below. Join us next week for a roundtable discussion of a film that I think is leagues better than Superman and worse, and that is the not a remake, kind of a legacy sequel, but mostly a remake of I Know What You Did Last Summer. Wow. That'll be 8 p.m. Central next Wednesday, the 23rd, I think. And yeah, until next time. Oh, sorry. If you like this show, again, please like, subscribe, and all that good business. Ring the bell for notifications. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care. And now I'm going to go up, and away from this live stream by pressing this.